Chapter 44-56. Third more. This battle I answer it. When the sword Wushuang stepped out, the audience was silent after saying this sentence. Everyone is. Master, absolutely must. Jian Wushuang is my universe's arrogance. If anything goes wrong, it will be a great loss to my universe. Hyun Supreme also flashed his eyes and said, This is not possible. Jian Wushuang is not the elementary supreme practice, and the three-headed snake has 4 mark-level virtual men. According to the realm swap, this is the top supreme, plus a false explosion is enough to compare to the invincible supreme. Everyone persuaded. At this moment, a seemingly strange sound sounded in the hall. What's so bad? Once we know the deployment of the void universe, we can deal with it in advance, and even wait for the rabbits to wipe them out. This matter is very important. What's the matter for Jian Wushuang to go to the war? In my opinion, don't just say let Jian Wushuang fight a battle. Even if Jian Wushuang took the initiative to die, it would be due to the universe. It's his duty. The speaker is not someone else. It is the Diwu Temple Supreme who joined the 6th team. Alas! Suddenly, many eyes fell on him. The deputy captain of the 7th team, Rongjing, sneered, You are so nice, why don't you go to death? Also, what is your duty? As far as I know, Jian Wushuang has come to this point. It's all on his own, and who hasn't owed half of it? How can he say it? I. Suddenly, the supreme Nana from the Diwu temple opened his mouth and thought for a long time before sulking. This 3-headed snake willow is not me by name. When everyone heard the words, they couldn't help laughing, and when they wanted to say more, they saw the Zhou shook his head and said, Okay, be quiet. Then everyone shut up. Wu Zhoushan looked at Xiang Jianwushuang, and Xinsheng asked, Little guy, if you are against him, how sure are you to win? Wu Jianshuang heard the words and smiled, then stretched out his hand, grabbed into the void, determinedly, 10%. It is good. After hearing the words, the God of Gods suddenly flashed in his eyes and nodded, The sword is unparalleled, and the old man will let you fight on behalf of our universe. Others still wanted to talk, but when they saw that the of the universe had already made a decision, Jian Wushuang also looked like a vow, so he nodded and stopped saying more. It was the delusion who heard the words, and the corners of his mouth widened suddenly, pulling out a cold smile. Oh, I seem to be underestimated? Alas! The bifurcated pointed tongue licked the corner of his mouth, and the pupils of the willow dark green burst up, showing a trace of cruelty. Well, my husband will arrange a battlefield for you. The god of the phantoms tears at will, and immediately tears a crack in the void, turning it into a kingdom of gods. There are everything in the sky, the mountains, the lakes and the rivers. This ability to break new ground and create the world is truly amazing. Immediately, Zhou God took a photo with his right hand, grabbed Willow from the air, and threw it into the battlefield of the kingdom of God. Thank God. Wu Jianwushuang arched his hand at him, and then stepped into a streamer, and also shot into the battlefield of the kingdom of God. On the Great Hall, the silhouettes of Jian Wushuang and Delirium disappeared. Instead, a landscape picture appeared. In the picture were the 2 swordsmen and Delirious in the battlefield of the kingdom of God. Look at it, since Jian Wushuang said that he was 10% sure, he wouldn't be wrong. The of the universe faintly spoke. Everyone responded in congratulations, raised their heads and looked diligently at this picture. God Kingdom Battlefield. Wu Jianwushuang and Lulu stood on a large lake and stood with their hands. The 2 did not have more nonsense, and they started the fight directly. Ha! With his right foot stepped, Jian Wu overturned all the lakes, forming a giant wave surging, and the wave reached 100 feet high. Suddenly, in the tide, Jian Wushuang has already held the Taro Excalibur in his hand, turning it into a forest blue sword, and rushing out. The waves of Baizhang broke open instantly, and the figure of Jian Wushuang appeared above the head of Willow. Cut! The cold voice exploded. Qi Jian Wushuang directly spurred the divine power and fell down severely. Hiss! Delirious Willow spit out snakes, and the green pupils reflected the appearance of Jian Wushuang, a sword flying, and opened a red light wave. Ha! Instantly, this red light wave hit the tailored Excalibur that fell down and chopped off, and immediately sent out an extremely powerful shock wave. Ha! Instantaneously, the shock wave spread out and razed the square to the ground. The tens of millions of tons of water in the flooded lake are directly dried and evaporated, turning into water vapor, forming a monstrous white wave. Fortunately, this side of the kingdom of God was developed by the of the universe, and the space is extremely stable. Otherwise, if it is placed outside, it will be enough to smash the void and burst several planets. Boom! Both were retreats, and Willow was smashed into the ground hundreds of pieces, and a huge human-shaped pit appeared, while Jian Wushuang flew backwards, crashing into 3 mountain peaks in succession. Kankan stopped. This move was just a small tentative test of the two, so the two did not suffer any injuries. Breaking dawn. Yen Jianwushu leaned against the mountain wall, stepped on his right foot again, and his body radiated again, turning into a golden light and killing towards Willow. Virtual crack. Delirious Willow's 3 snake heads were glued together, raised his hands, and slammed his sword towards Wushuang. Suddenly, 2 halos appeared in his hands, which actually caught the breaking dawn golden light. Ding 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 ding. Huge impulse, pushing Willow back hard and violently back. His feet marked 2 deep grooves on the ground in his hands, countless sparks splashed. Go to hell! Delirious Lu Yen laughed. The 3 snakes' heads opened, and they bit the sword's head. Yes, it is you. Yen Jianwu's eyes were cold, and he directly urged Chaos Overlord, sweeping his right foot fiercely, sweeping like a 9-section whip, and hit the snake head under the biting Willow. The snake head of Delirious Willow suddenly swayed, and Jian Wushuang took the opportunity to yank out the Tai Luo Excalibur, and one sword flew Delirious Willow coldly, the 4th season of the Terra Sword Classics. Suddenly, the entire battlefield of the Kingdom of God was twisted, and the Taro sword disappeared. Click the whole world of the Kingdom of God, whether it be mountains, rivers or lakes, it freezes and freezes every inch of an inch, the temperature suddenly drops by dozens of degrees, and countless cold snow falls from the air. At a glance, the whole world was snow-capped, like a white hatta covered with ice, and fell into the world of glaciers. Okay. Delirious Willow looked up at the sky and snow, and he couldn't help but stiffen. Alas! A gust of snow fell on his shoulder. Suddenly, the horrific ice-cold power directly passed through his body and instantly frozen his entire shoulder. Chapter 4457. It is good. In the main hall of the base camp of the universe, everyone looked at the battle scenes coming from the screen and clapped their hands. No wonder there was news from the universe before, saying that Jian Wushuang is the first day of eternal arrogance, and has the ability to fight beyond the ranks. This seat will still be doubtful before. Now, it seems that the rumors are half exaggerated? Oh, remember that this trick was created by Taro's guy that year? Seeing Jian Wushuang, he has already done Taro's supreme true story. He will probably be better than Blue out of Blue, surpass Taro Supreme, and take it away. The name of the first sword emperor of all ages. Since Supreme, I haven't seen such a profound person in Kendo in the universe for a long time. I really miss it. After this sun, the future is limitless. In my opinion, I'm afraid it won't take long. The Taro Excalibur will be renamed and replaced by the Wushuang Excalibur. Everyone said with a smile. They were quite worried at the beginning, but at the moment when they saw Jian Wushuang, who could perfectly suppress the Willow, they felt relieved. Only Hin is supreme, frowning slightly. I don't know why, there is always a bad feeling in his heart. God Kingdom Battlefield. Wu Jian's unparalleled footwork is empty, his black hair is flying, and he looks down at the icy Willow frozen in ice and snow, and speaks coldly, burning. Suddenly, the body of the 3-headed snake Delirium directly exploded and shattered into numerous ice foam. The Jian Wushuang saw a slight sigh of relief, and he could feel that the jianqi mixed in the snow had completely crushed the Willow into dregs. Hiss! However, just then, numerous tentacles poured out, tangled fiercely, and turned into the appearance of a 3-headed snake. His breath is not diminished, looking up at Jian Wushuang's eyes, full of irony. Okay. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, and even if he had to say that the recovery ability of this virtual man was simply terror, and he could not help moving. Su took a deep breath, and Jian Wushuang sneered, I see you can survive a few blows. 4 seasons, winter to spring. Boom. Suddenly, the snow disappeared, and all the spring thunder blew. The drizzle drizzled, rolling down, like playing a robbery fairy song. Millions of raindrops are millions of swords. Slaughter. Fall. Qi Jian Wushuang said coldly. In an instant, millions of sword qi turned into raindrops, rolling down at the same time. Every sword qi is the full blow of Jian Wushuang. Zheng Jin's move killed the Yuding Supreme and the thousands of avatars of the Supreme. Rumbles. Suddenly, the 3-headed snake Willow just had to fire a few virtual bullets, and his body was again destroyed by millions of swords, and his body was broken. In the main hall, everyone looked at this scene again and again applauded. However, this time it was not only Hyun Supreme's brow that frowned, but even the of heaven flashed a light in his eyes. God Kingdom Battlefield. No. There is a problem. Wu Jianshou stopped moving, his brows tightened tightly together. If something goes wrong, there must be a demon. He played against the 3-headed snake Willow in the extraterritorial battlefield. He knows the strength of Willow, and he is definitely not so weak. Until now, Willow had not performed the magical power burst at the bottom of the box. This guy must be thinking about it. Qi Jian has no two-way talents, but just in an instant, he wants to understand everything. Why would Lulu find him so low, and why he hasn't performed his tricks? This only proves one problem. That's the delusion that Lulu is carrying. Well, let me see what are you doing? Wu Jianshou snorted coldly, a flash of color flashed in his eyes. 4 seasons, spring to summer. Rumble. Suddenly, the raindrops disappeared in the sky, a scorching sun, rising suddenly, hanging high for 9 days. Xia of the 4-season swordsmanship is the most violent and most terrifying move in the 4 seasons. Qi Jian Wushuang did not believe it, and Lulu dared to cope with ease as before. Go with. The next moment, Jian Wushuang waved his right hand heavily, and this round of fiercely hot sun, he immediately crushed towards the willow. Rumble. The entire battlefield of the kingdom of God shook madly, the earth began to dry and split, and dozens of gully marks appeared in the sky. The sky is falling apart. This time, the willow has finally changed color. The pupil in his eyes contracted violently, and a dip in his face surged, and said, Void explode. Suddenly, the left and right heads of Willow were blown away severely, thousands of energy were accumulated in his mouth, and a terrifying light wave was born. Roar! The next moment, this light wave radiated out, and collided with the big sun that fell heavily. Let sizzle. The void is twisted for a while. Even if you see, the extremely stable space of the kingdom battlefield opened by the god of Zhou himself is beginning to be full of dense cracks like spider webs. Countless devastating energies exploded from the impact of the two, slamming the quartet madly, completely leveling the mountains and rivers of this Fangshen's country to the ground, like chaos. In the main hall, many of the Supremes watching this scene were all shocked on their faces. The power of the two men's fight has reached half-step Invincible Supreme. No, the average half-step Invincible Supreme cannot cause such a powerful power. It can be said that the two are infinitely close to the Invincible Supreme. Swords matchless, worthy of the name of the first day of the universe. For many years, ever since the 100,000 Chaodong prehistoric kingdoms died in the hands of Su Shi, I have never seen such a villain. I wait for the universe to be so proud that it is the blessing of our entire universe. Everyone's eyes are astonished. Even the god of Eo, who occupies the main seat, flashes a glory in his eyes. Xuani, you have a good apprentice. There was a slight smile on the corner of his mouth. What? Delirious Willow growled wildly, and the horrible light waves in his mouth continued to grow stout, and the power increased even more. Talents, primitive universe. Dragon blood secrets. He Jianwushuang is also eager to crack. He is urged by various mysteries and turbulent powers, and his firepower is full. Next moment, boom! Two energies finally exploded, and a huge mushroom cloud rose. The whole world of the kingdom of God, trembling madly, as if to be destroyed the next moment. Suddenly at this moment, the three-headed snake Lulu suddenly burst out into a crazy laugh. This is the time. His body burst into pieces, directly turned into a snake with the thickness of an arm, a fierce bounce, turned into a streamer, and instantly appeared beside Jian Wushuang. Soon after, he opened his mouth wide, exposing two sharp and stout fangs with twinkling chills, and biting Jian Wushuang's neck fiercely. Illusion, Curse of Zombie. Chapter 44-58. Fifth is here. Huh! On the little snake turned into delirium willow, a ray of light flashed over the fangs, biting hard at Jian Wushuang's neck. It all came too fast. As soon as Jian Wushuang didn't respond, the willow's fangs had pierced Jian Wushuang's skin and bitten into the neck. A sudden pain came. Jian Wushuang couldn't help screaming, just stretched out his hand and was about to pull the delusion off his neck, and saw that the delusion directly turned into a glimmer of light and penetrated into Jian Wushuang's body. What? Instantly, Jian Wushuang surged like a crackling sound. Ha ha, from now on, sword unparalleled, I am you, you are me. We two share one. Jian Wushuang didn't open his mouth to speak, but in his throat, there was a sinful sound completely different from him. The pupils of the pair of purple-gold eyes of Jian Wushuang are rapidly changing, turning into the vertical pupils of faint green. Get out of my body! Jian Wushuang's expression was bleary, and he roared. He felt that in his body, an extremely strange power was taking control of his body. This is not eluding. If it is eluding, no one has robbed him of the perfect chaotic creature. Delirium Willow, to accompany him. Haha, sword unparalleled, no need to struggle. This is the curse of the snake god, you can't resist it. Come on, don't resist me. With the cooperation of the two of us, you will have both divine power and virtual power. By then, both universes will be at our feet. We will become the true co-owners. What kind of false god, what of the universe, will only become the lingering ants under our feet? We too will sit high in the clouds, overlooking beings, enjoying the supreme power of life and death in the universe. Jian Wushuang, think about it, how wonderful it is. Deep and wicked, with a smirking voice, again from Jian Wushuang's throat. Wu Jianwu opened his mouth, and his tongue turned into a forked snake letter. In a short time, Jian Wushuang completely turned into a half-human half-monster monster. I'll say it again, get out. Jian Wushuang gasped sharply and yelled. Control of the body is his bottom line. He will never allow anyone to touch his finger. Hissing, sword unparalleled, I said, you can't resist it. Why do you think I chose you among so many people? In Jian Jianxi's throat he made another sound. This scene is weird to the extreme. He is like two people living in one body, one yin and one evil, talking to each other. The words came down, and it was only at this moment that Jian Wushuang really understood the intention of the willow. From beginning to end, everything is carefully calculated. What I did was this moment. Wu Jianwushuang was silent. He could feel that the power of the willow was constantly wandering in his body, robbing him of his physical control. Want to take my body? Never! There was a madness in Wu Jian's eyes. Even if it is death, it will never be the same, he will never be able to control the flesh together. Universe Base Camp, inside the main hall. Sword warriors. Everyone was taken aback by this mutation. It all came so fast that they didn't respond. Qi Mingming Jian Wushuang also suppressed absolute willow with absolute superiority, but in a blink of an eye, the sudden change suddenly occurred, and willow was fighting for control of Jian Wushuang's body. The dialogue between the two was also transmitted through the screen. It made them jump in their hearts. If Jian Wushuang really agreed to what Lulu said, the combination of divine power and virtual power would bring about a real demon evil between heaven and earth. with the talent of sword unparalleled. Once he grows up, he will flow between the universe and the virtual universe, and become a peerless demon that no one can subdue. Heiyuan Supreme and others were instantly green. His relationship with Jian Wushuang is not familiar, but in just a few meetings, he already has the feeling of being born to death. Presumptuous. Suddenly, the expression of the of Zhou was gloomy. Photo. He saw that he grabbed his right hand, and immediately grabbed the sword Wushuang from the battlefield of the kingdom of God. Old man, do you want to kill me? Do you have the heart to lose such a genius in your universe? Wu Jianshou was caught, and he was not half afraid, but instead looked at the Shinto god with no fear. This is an idea he has already made up. It's best to be able to win the sword without a match. Even if he can't take away the sword Wushuang, the of the universe wants to burn the jade and stone, he can take away the sword Wushuang. For him, this wave of trading is not a loss. Do you think the husband can do nothing? Wu Zhou God raised his eyelids and said, Old man, you don't need to bluff me, no matter how strong you are. The practice system of our two universes is completely different. Why can't you be mine? Is it? Wu Zhoushu grabbed his right hand, and Jian Wushuang suddenly seemed to be sucked by the vortex, and shot at the palm of Zhou. Divinity, seal. In that moment, the old 5 fingers of the god of gods spread out, and patted it on the head of Jian Wushuang. Instantly, countless soft divine power emerged from the palm of the god, turned into a warm current, and rushed into the body of the sword. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's body trembled wildly. Roar, roar! He squeezed his mouth and made a painful growl. However, the of the universe was expressionless, his big hand pressed firmly on the top of Jian Wushuang's head. Everyone looked at this scene, all of them were upset. After, Jian Wushuang's trembling body gradually calmed down. He closed his eyes tightly and fell into a deep sleep. At his neck, a complicated black rune appeared on his neck. In the middle of the seal, he looked like a snake. Send sword Wushuang to rest. There was a tinge of tiredness in the eyes of Wu Zhoushan, and he opened his mouth and spoke to Lan Su and Lan Lan who were standing on both sides. Yes. The 2 disciples quickly responded with congratulations, shooting a gentle divine power, rolling up the sword unparalleled, and walking towards the distant palace. I waited until the 2 left with their swords. Wu Heiyuan Supreme and others looked at each other and quickly asked, Master God, what happened to Jian Wushuang? Is there anything wrong? The Zhou looked at them and said, I have performed the magic and suppressed the 3-headed snake delusion inside Jian Wushuang's body. It should not be a problem to think about it. However, because the divine power is not the same as the virtual power for the sake of it, I can't remove it completely. I can only say that this seems to be okay, but left there, maybe one day it will erupt, and the future will be endless. As soon as this remark came to an end, everyone couldn't help looking at each other, and they felt like they were indifferent. Chapter 4459. 3 seconds passed in a blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang finally woke up. Wu Jianshou got up from the bed and squeezed his swollen brows with his hands, then his thoughts surged. He remembers that he was fighting for control with Delia in the battlefield of the kingdom of God, and then his consciousness fell asleep. And now, he felt his body carefully, and the delusional willow lurking in him had disappeared, and he had 100% control over his body. But, somehow, on the right side of his neck, a dark seal rune appeared. What is this rune? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. If he guessed right, the disappearance of Lulu should have something to do with this rune. As he was thinking, the door of the room was pushed open, and the of the universe stepped in. See God of the universe. Wu Jianshou quickly arched his hand at him. You're welcome. Wu Zhou God smiled gently and said, Little guy, how do you feel now? Wu Jinshuang replied, No problem. That's good. Zhou God nodded, then his face became a little serious and said, Jian Wushuang, I just used magical powers to suppress the power of the willow in your body. It's a force, and you do mind it. Relax, naturally you want. There was a moment of thought in Wu Jian's eyes. The 2 chatted a few more words, and after seeing that there was nothing abnormal about Jian Wushuang, Zhou Shen left the room. In the room, only Jian Wushuang was left. He sat cross-legged on the bed, continually meditating on the words of the earth. Delirium willow, although it has been sealed, but he is like a time bomb, maybe it will explode at any time. It is impossible for him to pin his destiny on others. Slap yourself, you must kill the wicked willow that was deposited on him. Then, the first thing you have to do is to understand the structure of virtual force. Only after you understand the virtual force can you have the opportunity to destroy the force left by it. Void, how to understand. After a while, Jian Wushuang thought about nothing, and had to stand up and walk towards the outside. Outside the squatter house, a supreme name hurried. Wu Jianshuang just wanted to say hello to them, but could not help but frown. I saw these supreme glances on his face, and his face was all stunned. Then he evaded vaguely and distanced himself from the sword. Immediately, a whispered sound rang out from their mouths. Hello, have you heard of it? Jian Wushuang was taken away by the people of the virtual universe. Yes, it is said that he was still a foremarked vagrant. Hurry up and stay away from him. Although the master of the god used the great magical power to suppress the Su Shi in his body, it was not completely eliminated, that is, the Su Shi in Jian Wushuang may erupt at any time. Yes, don't be afraid of 10,000, just in case, that's a four-marked virtuoso, and the captain level can't shoot, who can subdue him? Hurry up, get away from him, otherwise if he violently kills, wouldn't we be in danger? After a while of discussion, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but frowned and tightened. I seem to be isolated? Sun shook her head, and Jian Wushuang did not take it to heart either. Isolate him just right and keep quiet. Wu Jianshou stepped forward step by step. Just then, a group of laughter came. When Jian Wushuang was taken away, I saw it with my own eyes. That miserable look is absolutely impossible. I can't describe it. I tell you, it's best to stay away from Jian Wushuang when he sees it, otherwise if he violently kills someone, which one is closer to him, would he just hit his muzzle? Jian Wushuang heard the words, and between the eyebrows, there was a coldness. He lifted his eyes and saw a group of ordinary supremes, who were surrounded by the black-robed supreme from Diwu Temple, listening to his story. And before speaking, it is the black-robed supreme of this Diwu shrine. It turned out he was fanning the fire behind his back. The cold mang flashed in Wu Jian's eyes and stepped forward. He remembered that in the main hall, it was exactly what this person said. It was his duty to go to fight with Willow. Even if he went to death, it was for the universe and it should be. Crackling. The footsteps sounded. Sui Na was originally listening to the story of the black-robed supreme in Diwu Temple, and everyone with a satisfied face saw Jian Wushuang coming, and suddenly he was stiff, and his face was frozen. Swords are coming. Run. The seal of Jian Wushuang must have been broken. Suddenly, the crowd frightened and excitement and became a bird and a beast. At the same time, the black-robed supreme stunned in his heart, and lowered his head to open. Want to leave? Wu Jianshou sneered, with 5 fingers stretched out, grabbing directly. Suddenly, the black-robed supreme was like a little chick who was caught, and flew directly into the hands of the camera sword unparalleled. With 5 fingers, he tightened his throat instantly and held it up slowly. Sword unparalleled, what do you want to do? This is the base camp, and you plan to kill me. The black robe rose with a flush of redness on his face, forcing him to calm down. Don't you dare me? The cold mang flashed in Wu Jian's eyes, and the 5 fingers suddenly exploded into the sword, pouring into the black-robed supreme body. As long as Jian Wushuang urged him a little, these sword chi that poured into the body of the black-robed supreme could instantly hang him and destroy him. The black-robed supremely felt the arrogant sword energy in his body, and suddenly a big terror between life and death came to his heart, and his face couldn't help turning white. Sword unparalleled, I didn't mean it, I apologize to you. His lips trembled, flashing begging eyes. Jian Wushuang is the first day of the universe and won the protection of the gods of the universe. He is really not sure whether Jian Wushuang killed him and will not be punished. If after hearing a half sentence you fan the flames, chewing the roots of your tongue, you will understand the consequences. Jian Wushuang snorted and slowly released his hand. The black-robed supreme suddenly fell on the ground. Get out! Ji Jian looked down at him with no expression on both sides and said, Yes. The black-robed supreme did not dare to show any dissatisfaction and hurriedly crawled away. Jian Wushuang saw this and shook his head. This kind of person just jumped the beam clown. If he wanted to die, he wouldn't be worth the trouble. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang strode away and headed for the 7th team. In the 7th team, Heiyuan Supreme is practicing cross-legged. Team leader. Wu Jianshou arched his hand at him. Never mind. Heiyuan glanced at Jian Wushuang faintly and said, Sit down, I have something to tell you. It is good. Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head and swept down to Heiyuan Supreme to sit down. Heiyuan Supreme said, Sword unparalleled, our 7th team vice-captain returned to Crane Supreme, you should know. Chapter 4460. The 7th team is located in a bamboo forest. The bamboo shoots are green and green. Heiyuan Supreme sat against the sword unparalleled, and his large white owl was on the ground at will. Sword unparalleled, we know that the deputy captain of our 7th team returned to the Supreme Crane, you should know? Heiyuan Extreme asked faintly. I know. Wu Jianwushuang nodded. The establishment of a squad, including a captain, 2 vice-captains and 10 players. The captain of the 7th team is Heiyuan Supreme, one of the 2 vice-captains is the Honorable Supreme who has been with him, and the other is the Gueha Supreme. In the previous battle in the extraterrestrial battlefield, the arm of the virtual came, and countless Supremes died in the hands of the virtual god. Ji Rongjing had good luck and escaped this calamity, but it was not so lucky to return to Heiyuan Supreme, and in the second palm, he died in the hands of the false god. I just had an emergency at the beginning and had no time to worry too much. Now that things have come to an end, naturally I have to replace the deputy captain and replace it with a new one. Soon Heiyuan Extreme glanced at Jian Wushuang. He is not the mother-in-law's character. When he even said, Jian Wushuang, I mean, it's up to you to serve as the deputy captain of our 7th team. What do you think? After hearing the words, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and said, Isn't the position of captain and vice-captain always required to be half-step invincible supreme, or top-ranking supreme? Heiyuan Supreme heard a smile and said, Sword unparalleled, depending on your strength, which top supreme, or even half-step invincible supreme, can keep you steady? Although you CNT fix it, you're in war. Power is no different from the vice-captain level. This. Wu Jianwushuang thought for a while and said, Captain, we came to this extraterrestrial battlefield shortly, I'm afraid I can't convince the public. For the position of deputy captain, Jian Wushuang does not exclude it, but it is optional, but if it will cause many troubles, he will be grateful. Heiyuan Supreme heard a glance and shook his head and said, Jian Wushuang, you can rest assured that I have communicated with all the players clearly, and they all agree to you as the deputy captain. Speaking of, the candidate for the deputy captain is admire that guy who personally recommended you. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang had no reason to refuse, and he stood up and arched his hand and said, Then Jian Wushuang, I would respect it better. Good. Heiyuan Extreme smiled and nodded. After a while, Jian Wushuang changed into a deputy captain's robe and token, and the members of the 7th team greeted one after another. Hun Chun comes to autumn, and the sea changes. In the blink of an eye, 5,000 years passed. In these 5,000 years, Jian Wushuang led the 7th team, expeditions to the north and expeditions to the west, to suppress the extraterritorial battlefield. He continuously fought with Su Shi in the void of the void. In just 5,000 years, he experienced nearly 10,000 battles. This made him understand more and more about Su Shi. In the past 5,000 years, the sealed 3-headed snake Willow will not be abnormal at first, but the more the force remaining in Willow's body, the more violent it becomes. Especially when Jian Wushuang fought and fell into a state of weakness, the Willow will slam the seal frantically, trying to take away his physical body. Even once, the sword was double-faced against the 5-marked class Virtuoso, and after using Taro sword, it was directly controlled by the power of the Willow. If Haiyuan's supremacy had suppressed him, and let the Zhou suppress it again, I'm afraid that on that day, Jian Wushuang would be completely demonized and kill the war. However, in these 5,000 years, it is not without gain. Qi Jian's unparalleled reputation completely shocked the entire extraterritorial battlefield, and truly convinced the 7th team. Time passed like this. Jian Wushuang led the team to guard the void cracks, and did not teach Su Shi to take half a step. As the monks in the extraterrestrial battlefields changed with the killings, some people were constantly transferred from the universe to the extraterritorial battlefields. Among them, the Overlord and Mo Luo Yengu also came one after another. However, in the first battle, Moro Yengu was buried in the hands of a dummy. This also makes Jian Wushuang, parting from life and death, more and more pessimistic and numb. Jian Wushuang thought that the future will be spent like this. An urgent order from the god of Phenom was to transfer him from the void to the base camp. Base camp, inside the main hall. Characters at the rank of team leader and vice captain of the 9-9 team are all divided into two sides, with solemn expressions. Jian Sword Wushuang has a sword hanging on his waist, wearing a white coat, and striding forward. After 5,000 years of slaughter, the power of the tailored Excalibur has risen to a new level, and Jian Wushuang, who has always looked cold, has an extra touch of iron and blood between the eyebrows. As he walked into the hall, the people standing on either side of the hall were all brow, only to feel that Jian Wushuang came with blood and blood from his body, and his body was full of sky-high spirits. Sun Bingxian Supreme and Long Qing were the vice-captains of the 2nd and 3rd teams respectively, and naturally they were also in the hall. In the past 5,000 years, Jian Wushuang's limelight has been basking in the sun for a day, and it has been a long time ago. They and Jian Wushuang have a life and death feud. At this moment, goodbye to Jian Wushuang. Naturally there is more dissatisfaction in their hearts. Sword unparalleled, meet thee of the sky. Wu Jianshou knelt down on one knee, said with an arched hand. Get up. Wu Zhou smiled, stretched out his hand, raised the sword unparalleled. After I finished all of this, the God of Gods swept across the faces of everyone, and said, everyone must be very confused, why the old man called you suddenly. The voice fell down, everyone looked at each other and could see each other's doubts. However, everyone did not speak, but quietly waited for the next chapter of the universe. Wu Zhou was quite satisfied when he saw the situation. After nodding slightly, Xin Sheng said, the old man received the news in front of him. The void universe is very likely to organize a big riot, which will impact the cracks in the void and put the whole army under pressure. However, we don't know the exact time of the virtual universe or the deployment of this riot. So, the old man is going to draw 5 of you and go deep into the virtual universe to investigate the details of this big riot. As soon as this remark came to an end, the audience was shocked. Deep into the virtual universe? This matter is very trivial and extremely dangerous. As early as when the void crack appeared, the universe sent people to enter the opposite virtual universe. At the beginning of the group of candidates, it was not the others who led the team, but it was the head of the Palace of Life. However, until now, the powerful Lord of Life Jingu Palace has no news, and life and death are unknown. I can say that entering the virtual universe is almost a situation of 9 lives. Everyone in the grand hall looked at each other and took a breath of cold air. Sun Weijian's sword unparalleled. At the moment of hearing this, he suddenly raised his head, his eyes flashed to the extreme. Chapter 4461. Vitality. For Jian Wushuang, he now desperately needs an opportunity to understand the powerlessness. In his body, the magic spell left over by Willow has become more and more serious, and it will riot every once in a while. Although there is a god of chaos who will try to suppress it every time, he can never stay outside this domain in the future. On the battlefield, every time you wait for the help of Zhou God, right? This delusion will not be eliminated, and one day, sooner or later, it will cause a catastrophe. Therefore, Jian Wushuang had long wanted to find an opportunity to learn more about Shuli. Now, this opportunity comes. There is no better chance to understand virtual force than to go deep into the virtual universe yourself. Wu Zhoushan glanced, looked at everyone's performance, and said lightly, "Are you afraid?" This. Everyone look at me, I look at you, without saying a word. In the battle of the catastrophe of that year, the master of the Life Palace was only half a step away from the of the universe, and the people led by him were all invincible. But Rao is so, none of them came out alive. Nowadays, everyone in the hall talks about cultivation as a far cry from the master of the Palace of Life. How does going to the Palace of Life differ from death? For a moment, everyone hesitated. Master God, I am Hain willing to go. At this moment, Heiyuan Supreme stepped out and said Shinsheng. One after another, several captains stepped out of the crowd. They are the leader of a team and must set an example. When the of the gods saw this situation, they were already covered with Su Hanshuang's face, and then he eased down and said, people who travel to the virtual universe should not be inferior to the invincible supreme. Therefore, the 9 captains need not think about it. Go to the virtual universe, and be at ease to guard the extraterrestrial battlefield. As soon as his voice fell, the 9 captains could not help but stare at each other, and immediately said, Master God, what does this mean? The of the universe thought for a while and groaned and said, the magnetic field of the virtual universe is completely incompatible with the magnetic field of our universe. Those who live in our universe, the higher the cultivation, the more vulnerable they will be to exclusion and suppression, and the lower the cultivation, or the less repulsion and pressure. Therefore, your invincible supreme went to the virtual universe, but it was not easy to carry out, but the ordinary supreme passed away. It was not so conspicuous, and it was more convenient to act. Anyway, you went to the virtual universe this time, just to investigate in secret. It doesn't make much difference whether you are strong or not. Everyone heard the words, and that was all. After the god of Wu Zhou finished speaking, he looked at some top supreme in the hall, and half-step invincible supreme, waiting to see who was willing to go. Standing at the end of the sword Wushuang, his eyes flashed. He knows, it's his time. Master God, my sword Wushuang is willing to go to the virtual universe. Wu Jian stepped out step by step, Shinsheng said. After he finished speaking, he was still in a dark crowd, and suddenly he was about to move. I saw a flash of light in Bingyu Supreme's eyes, walked out of the crowd, and said, Master God, I Bingyu is willing to go to the virtual universe, for the sake of the universe's life and death plans, I Bingyu willing to go to soup and fire, never die. After he finished speaking, he tilted his head slightly, glanced at Jian Wushuang, and sneered in his mouth. Long Qing, who was standing next to the captain of the third team, also realized something and met the eyes of Bingyu Supreme and then said, Master God, I am also willing to go to the virtual universe. In the grand hall, the commotion suddenly became even greater. The contradiction between Jian Wushuang, Bingyu Supreme, and Long Qing has spread throughout the universe. Now Jian Wushuang has signed up for the virtual universe, and the two will immediately follow up. What do these two people report? A little guessing will make it clear. Bin Gao, Long Qing, I'm afraid it's false for the two of you to go to the virtual universe. Is it true to end your personal hatred? He also sneered at King Jiujia, who was also in the hall. In the 5,000 years of this battle, in addition to the most dazzling performance of Jian Wushuang, the second one is the King of 9 Calamities. He, like Jian Wushuang, also has the ability to fight across borders. In an extraterrestrial battle 3,000 years ago, he killed a 4-marked dummy and was promoted to the 9th team vice-captain. Next moment, King Jiujia arched his hand and said lightly, Master God, this time traveling to the virtual universe, I must have a seat in Jiujin King. As soon as he said this, the turmoil in the hall was even worse. Wherever there are people, there are factions. In the battlefield outside the territory, there were no accidents. In these 5,000 years, in addition to the captain-level figures, 4 factions have been formed with the most dazzling performances of sword warriors, 9 kings, Bingyu Supreme, and Long Qing. Wang Jiujia Wang was originally indifferent to eyes and noses and hearts. He suddenly said that he was going to the empty universe just now. They naturally understood it. Wasn't that afraid that Jian Wushuang was in the virtual universe and was killed by Bingyu Supreme and Long Qing? For a while, People from these four factions kept coming out and threatened to go to the virtual universe. The whole hall was suddenly noisy and noisy. I looked at the temple that was boiling more and more against the sky, and God's face couldn't help glooming, and it was getting ugly. At last, "Huh?" Wu Zhoushan repeatedly patted the table and said coldly, "Enough. Are you going to the virtual universe to swim in the mountains?" Howl. Suddenly, the whole audience looked like a chill, they all bowed their heads, and the crickets no longer spoke. The light of the eyes of Wu Zhou shone for a while, and when he saw the crowd no longer speak, he snorted coldly, "Let us go." This time, the person who went to the virtual universe, the old man, came to pick up yes. Everyone bowed his head obediently and did not dare to speak. Ling Yu Supreme. Extreme Ram. Morocco Supreme. The eyes of Wu Zhou glanced over the faces of everyone, and the soldiers were nodded. My Ling Yu/Ram/Bing Yu leads. The three of them immediately walked out of the crowd, and they should be. Jian Wushuang saw this, his brows frowned. This time to the virtual universe, he must go. As soon as he was going to take the initiative to ask him again, the God of God walked away and finally fixed himself on Jian Wushuang. Sword unparalleled. My sword is unparalleled. Yan Jian's eyes twinkled. It should be. 4 of you set off 3 days later, through the fissures of the void, to the void universe, to inquire about the news. Wu Zhoushan said with a deep voice, with a big wave of his hand. The 4 people who traveled to the virtual universe this time were shot down. The 4 of you must remember that this is the main source of inquiry, and you must be extremely careful not to expose your breath, otherwise, even the old man cannot save you, you will die. Finally, the Zhou looked deeply at the 4 of them. Chapter 4462. Yes. Pu Jian Wushuang, Ling Yu, Ram, Bing Yu Supreme, etc., all have their pupils narrowed. As the of the universe said, the crisis in the virtual universe is pervading. Once the 4 of them are exposed, the entire universe will be bombarded. Don't say it's the 4 of them, even if they are invincible, they will never be alive. Well, let it go. I'll send the treasure that can be hidden later to your palace. Wu Zhougad said. Afterwards, everyone disappeared. When Sun walked out of the hall, Bing Yu Supreme turned his head and smiled at Jian Wushuang Mori. The meaning of the threat is beyond words. Jian Wushuang ignored him, but walked out side by side with the 9 kings and overlords. Leader, when you go, I'm afraid that Bing Yu is not at ease. Overlord said a little worried. In this universe, we are not afraid of him, but once we go to the virtual universe, no one knows what's going on. In case that guy holds the same thoughts and fights with you in the virtual universe, to the breath will be exposed. Wu Jinshuang could not help but smile and heard his words, looked at him, shook his head and replied, Relax, he dare not. Don't dare? Lord, what does this mean? Overlord heard a word. Wu Jinshuang did not answer, but the next king of the 9 robbers sneered back, because he is afraid of death. The king of tyrants looked at Jian Wushuang and Jiao Jiawang, who looked at each other with a smile, and couldn't help it. Well, don't worry, Bing Yu Supreme does not have the courage to dare to fight against Jian Wushuang in the Void Universe, but he will definitely make some secret trips, which can't be avoided. The 3 of them said as they walked out of the hall and stopped. King Jiojia turned to look at Jian Wushuang, and Shen said, Sword Wushuang, I won't say much about this seat. In short, be careful. Okay, you are here, and you are also careful about that guy, Long Qing, who has been deliberately looking for opportunities to retaliate, and now I leave, I'm afraid he will put the spear on you. Wu Jianwushan said in a deep voice. Only him. There was a scorn of contempt on the king's face. 7th team, inside the bamboo house. Wu Heiyuan supremely explained Xiang Jian Wushuang a few words and then left the bamboo house. He is free-spirited, and although he does not take a risk to the swordless universe, since the of the universe has decided, he will not be upset by the pretense of pretending to be contrived. As he said, as early as when he went to the extraterrestrial battlefield, everyone should have the consciousness of hanging his head on his belt and dying at any time. Before long, Lon Lon knocked on the door of the bamboo house. Master Blue. Wu Jianso nodded at her. Sword Wushuang, didn't you say that? Don't call me Lord Lan, it seems too polite, just call me Xiao Lan. Tong Lan Lan said with a smile. Okay. Wu Jianwushuang touched his nose dumbly. This Lan Lan, I am afraid that he will be dozens of times of chaos. The two greetings made a few words, and immediately, they saw Lan Lan flipping his right hand, and took out a black waistband saying, Sword unparalleled, this is specially made by my master some time ago, and it can be blocked to some extent. Stay in the breath of divine power. This is the root of your journey to the virtual universe. It is good. Yen Jianwushuang's face swelled with dignity, and took over this waist card. Suddenly, a soft light surged from the waistband, turning it into an invisible mask, covering the sword incomparably. The sword's magical breath suddenly disappeared slowly. At the same time, there is some news about the virtual universe, which is released in Jian Wushuang's mind. Sword unparalleled. Although this waist card can cover the breath of divine power on your body, but the biggest feature of the virtual universe is that it cannot be imitated. Lan Lan Su Rong said. Illness and explosion? Jian Jianwu's eyes narrowed. Yes. Bien Lan Lan nodded and replied, one of the imaginary marks and the virtual explosion is their supernatural power evolution, and the other is their realm evolution. This cannot be replaced or imitated. Therefore, when you go to the virtual universe, you must control it so that there is no fighting, and you should not let people see your left shoulder. There are no virtual marks. Understood. Qi Jian Wushuang nodded thoughtfully. Pu Lanlan replied, okay, then I'll go first, take care. 23 days later. The four men, Sword Master Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme, led by God of the Era, came to the void crack. For people, if the old man didn't guess wrong, the imaginary universe opposite should be the periphery of a sect door. If you can, you and the other four must join this door to explore the news. Also, the old card given to you by your husband can send news from the virtual universe at any time. If you find out anything, you must send the news back as soon as possible. Wu Zhou stood with his hands up, exhorted. The four of them nodded, and without hesitation, stepped into the void. Howl. Wu Jinshuang only felt the darkness in his eyes, and then turned around. It seems that the whole world is turning over quickly. Alas! As if through the endless time and space, the universe is flooded, and immediately, a bright light is constantly enlarged in front of the eyes. Jian Jianwushuang fell, jumping out of a black hole. This is the virtual universe? Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes and raised his eyes to look around. I saw a green hill come in, and there was the sound of gurgling streams in my ears. A monster with a four-horse, a human head, and a halberd is staring at them. On his left shoulder, a long mark is particularly dazzling, a mark-level fictitious person. Enemy. The next moment, the celebrity's monster was hitting his spirits, and he was about to scream. Not good. When everyone saw this, their hearts were sinking. This monster with a stingy body must be sent by the Void Universe, who is responsible for guarding this void crack. Just when everyone dared to take action, Jian Wushuang already turned into a sword on, and sprinted past in an instant. The sky was torn, almost instantaneously, and the monster on the top of the horse just shouted an enemy character. Jian Wushuang had split it with a sword and cut his entire body. Soon after, Jian Wu's eyes twinkled in the light, and with a big wave of his hand, Jin Tianbei was used by him to suppress the monster fiercely. All these actions are coming to an extreme. By the time the other three reacted, Jian Wushuang had done everything. Seeing this, Lingyu, Ram, and Bingyu Supreme all looked at each other with a long breath in their hearts. I was okay, I stopped it in time, otherwise I was just afraid that the voice just shouted and they were exposed. Jian Wushuang, I'm waiting for you. Shi Lingyu and the Ram supremely arched their hands in surprise, saying gratefully. It was the supreme ice-cold humming with no saltiness, no gratitude on his face. Chapter 4463. Well, I don't want to stay here too much. I'll wait until I leave. Qi Jian Wushuang closed Jin Tianbei and said, Yes. Supreme Master Lingyu and Supreme Master Ram responded quickly, while Supreme Master Bingyu glanced at Jian Wushuang in an oblique manner, with a strange tone of yin and yang. Why? Is this your captain? Let everyone? Wu Jian Wushuang ignored him. If this place is not a virtual universe, he would have stabbed him with a sword. Even though the saying on the mouth of Sun Bingshuan Supreme was to follow a sword Wushuang, he was rushing towards a mountain peak. Rumble. A hole was blasted in the peak of Laoshan Mountain, and Jian Wushuang took the lead and walked in. Snapped. Wuzhen Tianbei was waved by Jian Wushuang, suspended in front of everyone. Tianjin Tianbei is a magic weapon for space confinement. It was originally of little use to Jian Wushuang, but it was unexpected that it played a role in the virtual universe today. In the town monument of Cheongjin, they turned into thumb-sized monsters and looked at the four people nervously. Who are you? What do you want to do? I am the three elders of alchemy. I urge you to quickly release me. Otherwise, once our alchemy is taught and found that I am missing, some of you will enter the earth and escape can't hunt. As soon as this remark came to an end, Jian Wushuang and Lingyu Supreme looked at each other, both frowning. It seems. This person doesn't know about the universe? Also, this place is called Lian Shenzong? Wu Jianshuang cleared his throat and asked hoarsely, Do you still want to ask who we are? I slept here a long time ago. You disturbed our slumber. What? You sleep in this void forbidden? The monster who was stunned by the head and horse was shocked, and then quickly said, Senior, the little inadvertently disturbed the senior's sleep. Please let the senior ignore the villain and let the villain go. Snapped. He saw the two legs in front of him soften and fell down on his knees, immediately scratching his head like pounding garlic. Jian Wushuang saw this, with a faint smile in her heart. It seems that this guy in front of him can be used as a waystone for the first time in the virtual universe. He converged his thoughts, and Jian Wushuang continued to ask with a hoarse voice, This one asks you, why are your refining gods here? What is the situation outside now? Upon hearing that, the monster on the head of the pony has no doubt that he was there and returned quickly. Senior, every void period in this void forbidden area will be guarded by one of the top forces in the universe. In recent years, we have been guarded again by our refining gods. Oh, have you been practicing the sect of God before guarding it? Wu Jianshuang frowned. The situation is a bit wrong. You must know that in his universe, there are constant wars in extraterritorial battlefields, and there are continuous virtual men pouring out through the void cracks. If it wasn't for the of the universe, he would have feared that the universe had already been breached. But looking at this person, there is no doubt about his appearance. He has no doubt whether it is from another universe. Then it proves that this person should be unaware of the existence of a different universe. Moreover, if those vagrants who attacked the universe, they attacked the universe through the void cracks they just appeared. Then this person cannot fail to know. They just appeared, and it's impossible to be guarded by just this one. There must be something he didn't know. After 3 hours, Wu Jianso walked out of the cave, his eyes flashed with thought. Through the side-by-side attack just now, he finally got some information. The place here is called the Void Forbidden Area. Here, like the far north of the universe where Jian Wushuang is located, it belongs to the forbidden space of the virtual universe. In this void, there are a number of unclear void cracks. This void crack is different from the void cracks produced by the powerful fight against the broken void of the universe. These void cracks lead to the heavens and heavens. No one knows where exactly these cracks will lead. I only know that, generally, those who enter the void crack can rarely come out again. What's more, every other virtual era, there will be different top forces in the virtual universe to defend the void. He is now guarding the forbidden land of the void, and is not far from here. Refining Shenzong is the top sect of the universe. The vassals in the sect are mainly corpses. The biggest card is to suppress a huge and immortal unnamed corpse. According to the monster on the head of the man, except for the inner teaching of Zhong Ai and the most important existence of the elder Tai Shang, even he could not touch the unknown fairy corpse. Jian Wushuang, the situation is almost clear. What should we do next? Sun Lingyu Supreme stepped out of the cave and said to Xiang Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang thought for a moment, Jingguang flashed in his eyes and said, "In my guess, it is impossible for refining Shinzong to not know about our universe, but this person's status is too low to reach the core. Things in this universe should be like our universe, news has been blocked, and only the top people in the universe know about it. Therefore, if we really want to find out their deployment plan of attacking our universe, it is just useless to just inquire about it. It is probably useless. There is only one way, that is." Speaking of this, Jian Wushuang's words stopped, and he turned to look forward to Lingyu Supreme, and said with a burning gaze, "That is to enter the refining god sect." At this moment, the Ram Supreme and the Ice Cricket Supreme also came out, and when they heard the words of Jian Wushuang, they couldn't help but be shocked. Absolutely no way. Refining Shinzong as the top sect of the virtual universe, there must be an invincible and supreme level 6 marked victories. If we go in, we are in danger of being discovered at any time. Yes, this is too risky. Supreme Lingyu and Supreme Ram shook their heads again and again. Supreme Master Bingbing even dismissed a sneer and sneered, "No, brainless husband, if you just rush into the refining divine sect like this, what's the difference between sending death?" "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang was not annoyed at the sight, but raised his eyebrows and said gently, "What do you mean?" "Of course, it's lurking down. From a long-term perspective, slowly figure it out." Bing stood supremely and returned proudly, "Stupid." Wu Jianwushuang glanced at him and sneered, "Now the universe will be under pressure at any time, and the universe will be attacked through the cracks in the void. When you come down slowly, I can go back to the universe to collect the dead." Suddenly angry, Yan Bingxian heard his words full of divine power, and he wanted to fight against the sword unparalleled. "Come, just because the last battle was too late to kill you completely, you were rescued by the Emperor Taishu, and you just waited to die here as you said. It would be better for me to kill you first." Wu Jianshou twisted his neck and looked back at him without fear. Suddenly, the air condensed. Chapter 4464. In the void, a surge of sword-strength breath continued to radiate from Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme. Bing's face full of anger, staring at Jian Wushuang stubbornly, his eyes spitting fire. Sword and sword unparalleled, looked back at him with the same cold eyes. In this virtual universe, he is unwilling to have conflicts and wants to try to take the overall situation as much as possible, but this does not mean that he will be bullied by others, and the Bingyu Supreme will be able to step on his head. "Okay, what are you doing?" "We are here to inquire about the news, not to fight internally." The Ram Supreme and the Mingyu Supreme hurried round the road. Bing Extreme heard a complexion in the face for a while, then finally snorted, "Don't go over," and didn't speak again. Jian Wushuang saw this and could not help but sneer. Fortunately, this battle stopped before the outbreak. Lingyu Supreme took a deep breath. "Dear everyone, I agree with Jian Wushuang's opinion. Now that the situation is urgent, I can only wait for the time to quickly explore the real news of the virtual universe and return it to the Lord God. Only adults can make arrangements. Otherwise, even if I stay here and lurk down, I just waste time." "I agree." After a moment of thought, the Cricket Ram nodded and said. Immediately, the three looked at Bingyu Supreme. "Bin Gao, what do you think?" Extreme cannot help looking even more ugly. "Don't all three of you make a decision? You still need to ask me what you are doing?" Bingshuan snorted extremely, which is also a promise of this plan. "Then the most critical question now is how to enter the refining deities?" Wu Lingyu Supreme asked. The three men of Jian Wushuang did not speak, but frowned. "Look, should we sneak in?" The Cricket Ram extremely scratched his back and asked. Wu Jianwushuang heard the words, could not help but glanced at him, and said lightly, "No, it's really trying to die if you go in this way." Several people discussed for a while, and the plans were all rejected by Jian Wushuang. The Ram Supreme could not help but say, "This won't work, that won't work either." "Jian Wushuang, then you talk about what we should do, go in?" Jian Wushuang did not rush back to him, but glanced back at the cave, the Remy horse monster that was suppressed in the town monument, and said, "Go in brightly." "Go in brightly? Isn't that really looking for death?" "Sword unparalleled, I think you still obediently back aside, let this seat take command. As soon as he said this, the Ram Supreme and the Spirit Jade Supreme were both absent-minded, while the Ice Cricket Supreme was sneer. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and did not talk about the Bingyu Supreme, but looked at the Ram Supreme and Lingyu Supreme, and said, "You forgot, what the monster with the horse head said just now is the Injie who is refining the world. Is it an apprenticeship? For us, as long as we are careful, the possibility of entering the refining deities is not small, and once we enter, we are generally not suspected." He compares his heart to his heart. Are you and the other lords who have opened up a force in this universe, will you suddenly suspect that one of the disciples is a fake person posing? You won't even think about it at all, but if you sneak into it once caught, you will be immediately suspected, and various investigations will be launched. At that time, even if we didn't find out that we were from another universe, we would definitely be directly imprisoned or killed. The words of Jian Wushuang fell, and all three frowned, thinking carefully about the feasibility of the words spoken by Jian Wushuang. Yes, because of their strength, they want to see through their authenticity. Unless they are the strongest level of refining Shinzong, can they see through their authenticity when they show their flaws? While they came in as the most powerful group in the universe, would they notice the selection of disciples? I went the most, but just a little attention, the most talented ones. Therefore, this seems the most dangerous way to enter the refining Shinzong, but it is the safest. All of you, our greatest difficulty is when we enter the refining deities, no one knows what their entry assessment is. Unknown means danger. You should think carefully. Qi Jian Wushuang said something, and after speaking, they would no longer care about them. For Jian Wushuang, this time it is imperative to go to refining Shinzong, not only to explore the news of the virtual universe invading the universe, but more importantly, he must go in to understand the structure of virtual force. Only in this way can he understand the virtual force, and then completely solve the time bomb tied to himself, the three-headed snake willow. Ask for wealth and wealth, fight. The risk is high, but it also means that the gain is high. The Ram Supreme and the Spirit Jade Supreme looked at each other, and then they bit their teeth and decided. And being extreme, the eyes are blinking, I don't know what I'm thinking about. It's not until a moment has passed before saying okay. Immediately, the four men knocked side by side, and learned from the monster's mouth that the head of the horse was the exact time for the reincarnation of Shinzong. After waiting until there was no question at all, Jian Wushuang took the monster of the head and horse together with the town of Tianbei, together into the Qiankuan ring. Zongmin, the top of the virtual universe similar to Lian Shinzong, etc. Zongmin must have a life card with a record of life and death. Once this head of the monster is dead in their hands, the life card is broken, only afraid that the refining Shinzong will soon move. He put them into the Qiangquan ring, and when the refining deities came to the reaction, when the elders in the rain disappeared, they had already entered the refining deities. After doing all of this, the four of them changed their looks and turned into monsters, rushing towards the Lian Shinzong. Jian Wushuang turned into a weird man with pointed ears and long wings, while Lingyu Supreme and others were either monsters with crystals or sheep-headed monsters. It's too easy for them to be the Supreme. Alas! A blast of fresh wind blew through the ears of the four, and it didn't take long for the four to cross the starry sky, and they saw a towering mountain peak soaring above the stars. Refining Shinzong, here it is. Beneath the mountain peak, hundreds and thousands of vagrants with different breaths and strengths were waiting outside the gate of the Shinzong mountain. These monsters are born in a variety of ways, and the swords look like four people. In this group of monsters, it is nothing more than ordinary, insignificant. Let's go. The three men of Jian Wushuang glanced at each other, took a deep breath, and did not care about the sudden disappearance for a while, before the reappearance of the Ice Mastiff Supreme, striding towards the position of Lian Shinzong Mountain Gate. Chapter 4465. Under the gate of Lian Shinzong Mountain, there was a disturbance, and there was a noise. Su Shi from all directions are gathered here, some cross-knee meditation, silent practice of power, and some everywhere to talk to people, want to forge good destiny. The four men of Jianjian Wushuang saw each other and could not help looking at each other. It seems that the vain people of this imaginary universe are not much different from this universe. According to the monster on the head of the human horse, if you want to worship the refining God, you must reach the star level, which is the mastery of the universe. I looked around. At this moment, when I came to refining Shenzong to worship the mountain gate, they were basically 2-star to 7-star priests, that is, the second-level master in this universe, and the monks who were almost invincible. Seeing this, Wu Jianshuang and other people also reduced the cultivation to the level of dominance. Under the waist card made by the of the god, the breath revealed by the four people was immediately no different from those around them. In order to reduce the risk of exposure, Jian Wushuang and others did not talk to the surrounding Su Shi, but quietly sat cross-legged, waiting for Lian Shenzong to open the mountain gate. Time flies. There are more and more Su Shi coming around refining Shenzong. Among them there is even a trace of Su Shi strong. A mark. The corresponding is the elementary supreme in this universe. In the universe where Jian Wushuang is located, once they step into the supreme realm, it is the power to overlook the universe. All of them are not only one hegemon, or the mainstay of the top sect, the top combat power. After a month. Rumble. The gate of the refining Shenzong suddenly opened, and thunders transformed by countless powerless forces breathed and exuded a powerful breath. A middle-aged man wearing sackcloth, a coffin on his back, tied with a blue rope around his waist, a green body, and 2 tentacles on his head, stepped out of the mountain door step by step. Refining Shenzong, it is not other things but corpses. According to the monster with the head and horse's head, there is a coffin mountain in the refined god sect. The mountain is full of coffins. Lying inside the coffin are various powerful corpses that have long fallen from the universe. Every disciple of the refining god sect, after entering the refining god sect, will enter the coffin mountain, refining one of his own corpses. This is precisely the reason why the Emperor Shenzong is refining, and the trace-level virtual princes in Mingzong are not too many, but they can dominate the virtual universe. Because once the corpse of the is refined, it is equivalent to owning an even more powerful clone helper on his own basis. This is the root of the universe where the refining gods relied on to crush the void. The person who had a tentacle refining Shenzong had a strong breath. As soon as Fong stepped out, he exclaimed in the crowd, "I didn't think that this time, the elder of the supreme religious sect had to visit the town. The elder must be a 3-mark vagrant. What's the situation?" This is the first time that Lian Shenzong has received his disciples and sent a strong man who is too senior to the elder level. The discussion sounded loudly, and everyone's expressions were unbelievable. Among those who came to worship the sect of refining sect, the Su Shi who had been on the mark was originally a high and unreserved appearance. After seeing this elder of the gods, he bowed his head and did not dare to maintain the slightest pride. Attitude. I saw 2 tentacles on the top of the head, and the whole body skin was green. The elder mustache, his eyes were as plain as water, swept across the faces, and then he said, "This time we refined the sacred religion to recruit disciples, and this seat was personally seated by the seat. Some muddy waters to fish and robbers, it is best to quickly retreat, otherwise once the seat is found, we will blame this seat for not being emotional." As soon as this remark was made, there was a commotion in the crowd. Nearly 100 virtual men, a flash of strife flashed on his face, and sometimes he looked at the elder of God, and sometimes looked down and thoughtfully, and finally had to sigh and retreat obediently. Yes, every time the refining Shenzong widely recruits his disciples, when he admits his disciples, there will be some bad people with bad intentions. He joined the refining Shenzong only for the corpses. Elder God Su looked at the people who had retreated from the crowd, nodded with satisfaction, and then said in a deep voice, "Then, this seat announces that the Shenzong introductory examination will begin now." Boom! The words of the crickets fell, and a huge stone foundation appeared in front of everyone. "What is that?" Ling Lingyu Supreme and Ram Supreme narrowed their eyes and whispered. Wu Jianwushuang thought about it and said, "It is estimated that it is a testing instrument used to test the talent, or how well it fits with the practice of refining Shenzong." Aren't we? The Ram Supreme looks worried. Don't talk about talent, they are not the people of this universe at all. Look at it. Wu Jian Wushuang thought back. Upon hearing the words, the Ram Supreme and Lingyu Supreme glanced at each other, then nodded helplessly. Bien is the Supreme Bingyu, this time without a word stabbed Sword Wushuang a few words, making Jian Wushuang quite surprised, cannot help frowning. Before coming to refining Shenzong, Bingyu Supreme disappeared for a while, and then when he came back to meet them, he became dumb and looked quite demented. What the is he doing? Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes, and there was a slightly ominous premonition in his heart. At the same time, the assessment officially kicked off. He saw the elder god must point to the suspended stone in the air, and said in a deep voice, "This thing is a talent detection stone. One is to detect your waiting talents, and the other is to check how well you and I practice Shenzong practice. You only need to line up one by one later. Just step on this cornerstone. By then, this cornerstone will naturally be evaluated with your talents and suitability to show the light." Of course, the flickering of the cornerstones has proven that you are talented and able to stay, but if the cornerstones do not respond at all, it is a pity that you are not qualified enough to pass the selection. Wherever you come from, please return back. Go, do and enter our refining deities. Elder Godbeard said that he glanced at the crowd and continued. There are 4 types of light shining from the trial stone. Red is inferior, blue is medium, purple is superior, and gold represents with superior qualifications. The appraisers nodded their heads when they heard the words. They all looked proud and full of fighting spirit. Obviously, they had already heard the test of the cornerstone of the trial and were fully prepared. Well, now that everyone understands the rules, let's start the assessment. Later, according to Xiu's strength, the people who came to the assessment automatically set up a long dragon under the gate of the Lian Shenzong. Yan Jian Wushuang and others have cultivated themselves to suppress 3-star virtual men, but they are not conspicuous, ranking slightly behind. It has started. The 4 men of Jian Jian Wushuang looked at each other and took a deep breath. Whether you can enter the refining God sect and explore the deployment of the virtual universe, the first step is now. Chapter 4466. Rumbles. With the order of the Elder Godbeard, hundreds of disciples have begun their majestic assessment. A 4-star Su Shi who had 3 heads and 6 arms came to the front of the trial cornerstone. He breathed a breath, sighed, stepped out, and stepped on the trial cornerstone suspended in the void. The trial stone did not move, but a strong red light suddenly burst out and hovered over everyone's head. Red light, inferior qualification. Everyone looked up at the top of their heads. Some people looked disdainful, but most of them looked at the 4-star Su Shi with a hint of envy. After all, the evaluation of the refining Shenzong is notoriously rigorous. Once there were geniuses who had qualified in other sects, or the vain who had already made a big name in the universe. An inferior qualification. So, as Elder Godbeard said, as long as the trial stone can shine for you, it already represents your extraordinary talents, and the god of religion will recruit you. The 4-star Su Shi looked at the thick red light above his head, with a look of joy, but there was still a dimness in his eyes, apparently not satisfied with his inferior qualifications. The elder god must take a look at the 4-star Su Shi, then withdrew his gaze, and announced with no expression, "Red light, inferior." Suddenly, in the rich red light in the sky, a purple light suddenly appeared. Although the purple light was extremely thin like the wind blows away, it floated a little and finally hovered on top of the red light. Okay? The elder god's indifferent expression changed instantly, and his eyebrows were raised slightly. Looking again at the 4-star virtuoso, who had no expression on his face, smiled and said, "Congratulations, purple light, medium talent." It is not surprising that God must change the attitude of the elders. Even many people who have assessed have paid more attention to the 4-star virtual priests. It is necessary to know that those who practice the divine sect disciples have flashed purple light in this talent test stone. In the future, the worst achievements will also be 7-star virtual men. In the face of this rising star, the people who go to the knot will naturally be in the minority. 24-star Su Shi laughed loudly, was full of heroism, and was full of heroism. He strode to the right of the square where he could pass the examination and stood under the gate of the Lian Shenzong mountain. The other disciples who practiced Shenzong, looking at the 4-star Su Shi below, also looked slightly, showing a kind smile. Soon, another weird-looking duke walked to the cornerstone of the trial. This man was trained to be a 5-star duke, and he was even higher than the previous one. I saw his expression was excited and his steps were heavy. As soon as he stepped on, he flew up and landed on the cornerstone of the trial. And this time, the trial cornerstone remained motionless, but the light never flickered. For a moment, the weird-looking Su Shi seemed to have foreseen something, frowning, and he struck once again, stepping on the black stone fiercely. The final result remains unchanged, no light flashes. Damn, how could this be? The weird-looking Su Shi paused for a moment, and then roared, stepping down on the cornerstone of the trial with a sullen face. However, no matter how he trampled on, and no power broke out, the cornerstone of the trial didn't react at all. Sun's weird-looking Su Shi was unwilling and waved his fist desperately. He couldn't accept such an ending. At this moment, the elder man on the platform waved his sleeve, a white halo hit, and the weird man with a strange appearance floated out of the gate. The elder Godbeard shook his head and said lightly, "Next." The appraisers are all with their hearts in mind. This is the cruelty of practice. Once you set foot on this road, you will never have a chance to turn back. You can only climb up desperately, and you cannot tolerate the slightest slack, otherwise you will be eliminated. The 4 men of Jianjian Wushuang stood behind and looked at the scene expressionlessly. "It's our turn," said the Supreme Ram a little nervously. After all, they are not people in the virtual universe. The cultivation system is completely different. Even if they have the tokens given by the gods of the universe, they just hide the breath of divine power in them. As for whether they can be detected by the test bedrock, there is no bottom in my heart. One after another, there are people who have passed the test of the trial cornerstones, among which even Jingguang Mantian has reached the super qualification. I suddenly exclaimed in the crowd, even the elder, the beard who always had no expression on his face and a mild smile on his face, reached out his hand and brought the super qualified person into the gate. Chi Chaos qualifications represent that this person has entered the trace level in the future, and it is already a sure thing. Next person. In the voice of Elder Godbeard, the ram took a deep breath and stepped out. He is a supreme practice, and he is also used to the strong winds and waves in the universe, and he is on the top of his side. However, at this moment, he was nervous and sweating on his forehead. Here is the Void Universe, the top force of the Void Universe, with the 6-marked Su Shi's base camp for refining Shenzong. Once tadpoles are found, they are likely to fall here. Sword is unparalleled, will the rams be okay? Supreme Master Ling Lingyu was beside him, and asked a little worried. Do not know. Qi Jian Wushuang stared at the back of the Ram Supreme gradually, and his heart became extreme. The name of the visitor is coming. The elder god had to glance at the Ram supremely and said lightly. In his eyes, the Ram Supreme covered by the back of the god's waist card is no different from an ordinary 3-star vagrant. Here is the sheep. The cricket Ram Supreme arched his hand and reported a pseudonym. Will you start? The elder god must give him a slight look and said, yes. Ram nodded supremely, but stepped out, walking on the sky, 1 step on the cornerstone of the trial. At this moment, not only the Ram Supreme, but also the 3 masters, such as Lingyu Supreme and Jian Wushuang, are extremely nervous. My breath is over. 2 breaths passed. After 9 full breaths passed, the trial cornerstones did not respond, and no light was emitted. It should be that we are not people in this universe, so no talent can be detected. Wu Lingyu Supreme thought and said. This result, although somewhat disappointing, is not unacceptable. After all, as long as no identity is revealed, everything can be discussed in the long run. He thinks not only of Lingyu Supreme, but also of the Ram Supreme on the cornerstone of the trial, even the God-bearer. Talent is 0, back down. He was just when God required the elders to speak indifferently, and the Ram Supreme resigned. Ding! Ding 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 dash! Ding 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 ding! The cornerstone of the trial, a sharp alarm sounded suddenly. Chapter 4467. The sharp alarm sounded suddenly in front of the gate of Lianshanzong Mountain. Suddenly, Lingyu Supreme, Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme all changed their faces. What a mess! Exposed! The God-bearer elder, who had already bowed his head and was about to call another dummy to come to the trial, raised his head sharply and looked towards the Ram Supreme. You are not from our universe. The elder god's eyes had skyrocketed in the eyes of the elder, and he looked at the Ram supremely. The next moment he immediately raised his hand and patted towards the Ram Supreme. The horrible virtual power erupted directly, slamming it towards the Ram Supreme. Damn! The Ram Supreme face changed without any concealment. The supreme divine power of the whole body was mobilized, and his whole body began to skyrocket. In just a blink of an eye, the Ram's supreme breath was fully released, and the supreme coercion broke through the sky, which was not inferior to this God-bearer elder. Immediately afterwards, the Ram Supreme raised his right hand, facing the palm of the elder. In that moment, the horrible and mighty power turned upside down, like the tsunami of the Tianhe water, spreading out and spreading the mighty power, and directly crushed the victories around you, crushing them into powder. Go! The cricket ram screamed and slammed his feet. He turned it into a sky-like stalk and blasted towards the starry sky at a great distance. Sword unparalleled, Bingyu, this is impossible, we retreat. Sun Lingyu Supreme said quickly to Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme, and then the divine power burst out suddenly, turning into a skyward light, rushing in the opposite direction to the Ram Supreme. The elder god had to see this, and immediately frowned, as if he had realized something. First, he immediately spread his voice towards the Zhongmen, and then looked at Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme, and said, "They are a gang, central demon, stop them." Boom! I saw the lid of the coffin carried by the elder god beard blasting, and a corpse whose skin was dark and dry, and his facial features melted like a candle, rushed out of the coffin and made a roar on the sky. Immediately, the cadaver rushed towards Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme. It's not over yet. Among the refining deities behind the elder godbeard, there are again a few light rays that are not weaker than the elder godbearer, and rush out from it. Among them, most of them rush towards Ram Supreme and Lingyu Supreme, and there were a few remaining ones, surrounded by Jian Wushuang and Bingyu Supreme. Go! The cold sword of Wu Jianhui's eyes was cold, and when he just wanted to escape, he saw that the iced man with a numb and stunned expression was extremely supreme. He suddenly reached out his hand and grabbed Jian Wushuang's wrist. Ice! Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's heart was furious. He didn't expect that Bingyu Supreme would stumble at this time. He turned his head coldly, and saw Binjian's ridiculous ironic smile at the corner of his mouth. The next moment he saw an inch of ice on his body, and finally shattered. Mirror flower water moon, avatar. Wu Jianwushuang instantly understood. I was afraid that the Bingyu Supreme disappeared in front of me. This is the moment. Howl. For a moment, the dry corpse refined by the elder god must fall in front of Jian Wushuang with 3 scar-level strong men, and surround the sword without pair. One of the old men with dark spots on his face, a thin body, and eyes all over his body, suddenly had 5 long marks on his left shoulder. 5 scored Susher. Half-step invincible extreme. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's face was extremely gloomy. At the same time, on a mountain peak far away from Lianshanzong, a young man with silver-haired eyes opened his eyes slowly, and a touch of color came from his face. Fortunately, this seat has been anticipated. For the sake of insurance, let the clone go first. Sun Bingshu stood up, looking through countless clouds, looking towards the direction of Lianshanzong. Swords warriors, I see you die this time. Ha! At the peak of Laoshan Mountain, there was the cold laughter of Bingyu. The next moment, Bingyu Supreme stepped on his right foot, and his body disappeared into the mountain instantly. In front of the gate of Shinzong Mountain, together with that dry corpse, a full 4 trace-level virtual men surrounded the sword unparalleled and blocked all retreats of the sword unparalleled. Say, where are you from? What do you want to do when you join the refining god sect? A monster with a sickle-shaped head looked at Jian Wushuang coldly. Wu Jianshuang's face remained calm, but his mind was extremely alert. This is definitely one of the biggest crises he has ever encountered. He knew in his heart that as long as his answer was a little careless, he would be bombarded by the monks who practiced the god of sect. At that time, don't say that he is just an elementary supreme. Even if he is invincible supreme, I'm afraid it will be difficult to survive. I don't understand what you are talking about. Wu Jianshou took a deep breath, and his expression returned calmly. Pretend garlic? Aren't you with the 3 who just fled? The questioning scab-shaped Su Shi with skull-shaped head just replied. Wu Jianshou shook his head and replied, Sir, I think you're wrong. I'm just on the way to meet them together. I don't know them. Ha, are you a fool? The scythe-like Su Shi, disdainful to return. I tell you, you are already in trouble today. If you tell the truth, this seat can still give you a happy, otherwise, you can blame this seat to make you a living corpse directly. As a slave, be slaved by my disciple. Jian Wushuang heard the words, his eyes could not help but chill in his mouth, and said calmly, Master, I really don't know what you are saying. I just met them on the road. That's it. At the same time, Jian Wushuang's right hand quietly held the hilt of the Terra Excalibur. The drowsy beast still fights. If these people really do believe it, they will fight for it. Unlucky you. I was just a sickle-shaped 5-marked dummy with a scythe-shaped head, and anger flashed on his face, unable to bear the attack. Among these people, Xiao was the highest, and the 5-marked virtual warrior who threatened the sword unparalleled, waved his hand and said lightly, It's useless to say more. Then, go to the cornerstone of the trial to test it. What you say is true or false. Naturally there will be results. After speaking, the 5-marked Su Shi with eyes full covered the sword Wushuang's face. It is good. He didn't hesitate. Wushuang nodded his head and strode toward the cornerstone of the trial. He knows that, if he has any hesitation, this 5-marked vein will kill him without hesitation. At the same time, he began to think crazy about the escape plan in his mind. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stepped on his feet, his body flew up, and he stepped on the trial cornerstone. Suddenly, an ancient force emerged from the cornerstones of the trial and began to scan towards Jian Wushuang. Chapter 4468. When Jian Wushuang stepped into the trial cornerstone, an invisible force emerged from the trial cornerstone, continuously scanning inside Jian Wushuang's body. Jian Wushuang's back was facing the elders of the refining Shinzong, and his face was extremely gloomy. Behind Jian Wushuang, the 4-mark-level virtual men who blocked Jian Wushuang's retreat were staring at Jian Wushuang's back. In addition, there are many more disciples who came to participate in the selection of Lian Shinzong, staring blankly at Jian Wushuang. They didn't know what was going on. They only knew how many swords were paired with swords, and they were able to draw the power from Shinzong. A breath has passed. 2 breaths passed. Tried the cornerstone, still no response. The ephemeral time seemed extremely long at this moment. After a while, the eyebrows suddenly narrowed as the highest 5-mark class Su Shi was repaired. The sickle-headed Su Shi who threatened to slay the sword unparalleled, had a sneer hanging from the corner of his mouth. Just when the cornerstone of the trial was about to sound an alarm, Jian Wushuang had quietly grasped the hilt of the Terra Excalibur sword, and was ready to go straight out of the sheath to perform the taro to take the lead. The seal of Zeus on his neck was loose. A force belonging to the 3-headed snake Delirium rushed out of him, instantly entangled with the scanning of the test cornerstone that had gradually receded. Boom! Suddenly, the world changed, and a ray of light never flashed on the cornerstone of the trial. In front of the mountain gate of the entire Lianshinzong, the clouds were dark in an instant, and the sky was dim, because the flickering light was like a galaxy black light. Moreover, unlike all the previous rays that only covered the gate of the Lianshinzong mountain, the practicing black mang swayed upwards and went straight to the sky, eventually forming a huge, thick black cloud above the sky. At this moment, the entire refining sect is under the worship of the black cloud. It hangs in the air like an ancient giant, forming a sense of urgency of black cloud over the city. Everyone raised their heads in unison and stared blankly at the dark light. All of them were shocked by the waves and shocked. It's rare in the audience, it becomes a dead silence. Hymen turned out to be black. Red represents lower qualifications, blue represents medium qualifications, purple represents superior qualifications, and gold represents superior qualifications. What does black stand for? At this moment, everyone looked up at the black light, and the black light was like smoke and tide, as if it were a raging smoke, covering the sky and the sun, the mighty. Dark clouds over the city want to destroy. Jiaguang opened to the golden scales of Japan. At this moment, the sky seemed to collapse, leaving only the thick black clouds. Under that dark cloud, Jian Wushuang, a black robe without wind, automatically filled the whole person with a sense of evil. The four elders, including the elder bearded man who was responsible for the selection of the disciples of the religious sect, all flashed a look of mistakes. Immediately, this mistake was replaced by shock. Those who have come to participate in the selection are already exclaimed. What is this? What the happened? Why is it black? This black light is too horrible. Its richness, even if it represents golden light of superb qualifications, is simply incomparable. This black light is unprecedented. What does it mean? The talented disciples who had detected the golden light looked arrogant and stood tall. Even the expressions suddenly sank. Everyone was puzzled. Even one of the elders who was still in the refining sect for a short time was curious. Elder Wind, what does this black light mean? The Elder Wind Moose is the 5-marked virtuoso who was repaired the highest in the audience. His eyes flashed, and his face continued to flash, until after a long time he said, "This black light represents those who are above the super qualifications, the absolute qualifications. I have practiced more than 1,000 epochs in the reign of the sect of the Emperor Shinzong, and have held a total of 1.49 million disciple selections. Among the 1.49 million disciple selections, even this seat has only seen black light twice. Once, it was the second sovereign, and once again, our sovereign lord today. Legend has it that there are 3 times this black light. In addition to the 2 times I have seen in this seat, there is 1 time, and it is the oldest one, which is our founder of refining Shinzong. It can be said that as long as black light appears on the cornerstone of the trial, it means that this person has entered the threshold of the peak of our universe. His future achievements must not be under my sovereign." Elder Feng's eyes finished. All of a sudden, the elder who spoke before was shaken, like a lightning strike. The sickle-headed elder, with dull and unbelievable eyes, asked sharply, "Only him? Can we stand with our Lord in the future?" In his gaze, Elder Moose nodded his head for sure, and then he thought of a kind smile on his face, walked towards Jian Wushuang, and asked with a smile, "Sir, what's your name?" Jian Wushuang didn't respond a little, because he didn't know himself how suddenly the situation reversed, and there was a black light like never before. Although he didn't know the meaning of the black light, it was not difficult to see from the face of the Moose Wind Elder that the black light that he blasted out must be something extraordinary. Otherwise, it is the cold and violent bombardment that he is hitting at this moment, not the smiling face of these 5-marked virtual men. Turning his head, Jian Wushuang loosened his 5 fingers holding the handle of Tai Luo's sword, and smiled. "Senior, just call me Wushuang." "Miss Shuang? This is a good name." Elder Moose smiled and then asked quite kindly, "Miss Shuang, everything before was misunderstanding. This seat asks you now, would you like to join us to refine Shinzong? I think you breath, now it should be Samsung, is it right? This place promises you that as long as you join my refining deities and keep you in a virtual era, you will break the mark." Hearing this questioning, Jian Wushuang's heart hanging high finally fell down. He knew that the first step he took was successful. The corner of his mouth slowly raised a radian. Jian Wushuang extended his hand and smiled slightly, extremely honored. Ha ha ha, what a great honor. Elder Moose Feng heard the words and burst into a loud laugh, reaching out a hand and holding the sword unparalleled. Mist Shuang, this seat represents the refining Shinzong. Welcome you to join. Let's go. Now I will go to the Lian Shinzong to register for the report, and then I will take you to the coffin hill to find the best coffin corpse. In the laugh of Elder Moose Wind, he took the sword unparalleled, turned into a golden light, and swept away towards the Lian Shinzong peak. The figure of the two disappeared, leaving only one face to face, and it was difficult to hide the envy of the selection. Chapter 4469. This man is developed. Well, Elder Moose Wind is one of the 3 elders who have real power in Lian Shinzong. They are the true core figures of Lian Shinzong. In words and deeds, they can directly motivate the entire Lian Shinzong. Shuang can actually take this shit and worship His Majesty Elder Wind. In my opinion, I will have a good relationship with Wu Shuang as soon as possible, and don't say that he can help us in the refining God sect. As long as he does not incite the wind in the ears of the Elder Wind Elder, it is a blessing to wait for me. You say, what kind of coffin will Elder Moose bring with him? After Jian Wushuang left, he left countless discussions in front of Lian Shinzong Mountain Gate. The sick man with a sickle head looked cloudy for a while. Impossible. How could this person be so talented? Also, before I saw those people from other universes talking with this person, they clearly looked like a deep intersect. How could they only know each other when they were on the road? This man must have used some secret method that caused this illusion. The sickle-head Su Shi murmured to himself, then slowly raised his head, looking at the disappearing Jian Wushuang and Elder Moose Wind, with a sneer in his mouth. Wait, Wushuang, I will catch you. At that time, this seat will not only want you to die, the Elder Wind, but also to bear the price for today's things. Refining Shinzong. Moose Wind with sword unparalleled, flying all the way. There is a gloomy look in the entire refining deities. The sky is red, the ground is black, and the flames of demon flames are rising everywhere. At first glance, it doesn't look like a shrine of one side, but it looks more like a ghost. This is really normal. According to the information learned by Jian Wushuang, the refining God sect is known for the entire universe of corpse sacrifice. The sect was affected by the corpse gas all year round, and this picture was caused by the passage of the sun and moon appearance. Mist Shuang, starting today, you can practice with this seat. Elder Elkwind walked in front and smiled. Doesn't they need to pass the suzerain? Jian Wushuang asked pretentiously. Elder Moose heard the words, with a look of pride on his face, and said, what is going to be done by this seat is naturally decided by the seat of this seat. Why should anyone choose to intervene? Having said that, an overbearing momentum emanated from the Moose Wind. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes upon hearing the words. It seems that the Elder Wind Moose has a very high status in the Lian Shinzong. But this is also good, just to save him the opportunity to climb upwards, to be able to get in touch with the high level of refining Shinzong as soon as possible, and learn about the attack on the universe. Okay, since then I have been photographed by Elder Moose. Jian Wushuang smiled and then turned sharply. He pretended to be slightly tentative and said, Elder Moose Wind, what are the backgrounds of the 3 people before? Why did they flee suddenly and attracted so many sects? As soon as these words came to an end, the atmosphere that was still very happy was suddenly condensed. Elder Moose Wind stepped on the sky and stopped, turned to look at Jian Wushuang, frowned and asked, what are you doing? Jian Wushuang's eyelids jumped, knowing that he was too anxious, and explained, Elder Moose Wind, I am purely curious. If you ask if you should not ask, please blame. Elder Moose Wind saw Jian Wushuang for a moment, and then a long time passed before he groaned. The people are not the people in our universe. According to my speculation, it should be our universe that entered through the void forbidden space. Well, this matter is of great importance, but it is the secret of our entire universe. As I said to you just now, you must not tell others. Also, you must not ask in the universe. If you want to know, you will naturally understand when you grow up in the future. It is good. Jian Wushuang heard the words blink and nodded. Sure enough, as he guessed, it is like the universe itself. Only the top people in the universe know about the extraterrestrial battlefields and other universes. Later, Jian Wushuang never spoke again about the alien universe, casually chatting with the elder wind moose and rushing towards the coffin hill. After a while, the coffin came to the mountain. Rao Shi Jian Wushuang can be considered to have seen a lot of strong winds and waves. At the moment of seeing the coffin mountain, he couldn't help but feel shocked, and his face was hard to hide. I saw a huge mountain that wanted to be higher than Tiangong's test appeared in front of him. This mountain is big enough to tear the sky and support the sky. The coffin hills are full of cracked black soil. There are no vegetation trees on the mountain. There are only small or large coffins of different shapes, lying quietly on the hill. A gigantic death gas rushed towards his face, and Jian Wushuang could not help but trembled with sweat and hair. Mist Shuang, this coffin pimple is the root of our refining deities. Why can't we refining the deities be against the void and stand against the universe? It is the corpse in this coffin. Being able to enter the coffin mountain and the corpses lying in the coffin, all of them have ordered the universe to be momentarily, and the Tianjiao power, we refine them, it is equivalent to have a partner with their own strength, can fight together. Elder Wind said in a deep voice. Elder Moose Wind, where did these corpses come from? Jian Wushuang could not help asking curiously. Elder Moose Feng heard a glance at Jian Wushuang, with an inexplicable smile on his face, and said, some of these corpses are the ancestors who died in our case, some died in the struggle, and we bought them at high prices. Now, as for what else? Speaking of this, Elder Moose stopped, with a sense of bloodthirsty in his eyes. Seeing the sword unparalleled, I couldn't help but feel cold, but I was afraid that most of the corpses in the coffin were all deliberately beheaded by the sect of God in the universe. This refining Shenzong is estimated to be full of blood. And at this moment, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but think that when he was fighting in the extraterrestrial battlefield, many of the supreme fallen in the battlefield, the bones disappeared. I'm afraid of all this, there is the shadow of refining Shenzong. For a moment, there was no trace of goodwill from Jian Wushuang to Elder Moose, leaving only a cold heart in his heart. Well, Wushuang, don't waste your time, go in and choose the corpse of your coffin. Elder Moose Feng did not notice the abnormality of Jian Wushuang, reached out and patted him on the shoulder of Jian Wushuang, said with a smile. You can rest assured that this seat will look at you here to help you choose a corpse that has great growth potential and is extremely suitable for you. It is good. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, then converged his thoughts, fell from the air, and walked towards the coffin hill step by step. Chapter 4470. Inside the coffin, the dead body was soaring. A solid black mist condensed into the sky, covering the sun and the moon. Wooden coffins, sarcophagi, bronze coffins and other coffins of various shapes, lying quietly in the mountains, waiting for someone to choose. Elder Moose Feng stepped in the void and stood with his hands on his shoulders. He looked at Jian Wushuang and chose the coffin. Mist Shuang, there are corpses all over the coffin. These corpses have different practices during their lives, ranging from ordinary star-studded priests to scarred priests, even to the 5 marks on this seat. Class Su Shi can be found in this coffin. The cultivation of these corpses during their lifetime is indeed an important part worthy of reference. After all, this largely determines the future growth of this corpse. However, you must not choose the corpses according to the height of the cultivation, because the fit of the corpses with you is more important than the cultivation of the corpses before their death. There were a lot of new disciples who had just started to practice Shenzong. They only selected the corpses that were cultivated as high. In the end, not only could they not refine the corpses, but they did not make progress by themselves. The most important thing was that they were still the corpse was backbitten, and his life was lost in vain. Such examples are endless. Fog double, you should understand the meaning of the old man. Therefore, Wushuang, the most important thing in selecting the corpse is to look at the degree of matching with you. As for the degree of matching, the old man can only say that you rely on your first feeling to see the beads. Does it fit? Jian Wu's eyes flashed a brilliant light, and then walked towards the first coffin. It was a wooden coffin lying quietly in front of him. As soon as he approached the wooden coffin, Jian Wushuang felt a blast of Jin Ge's killing spirit. In an instant, the sword Wushuang seemed to fall into the blood of the corpse, thousands of horses and horses. A burly man wearing war armor, wearing a black iron helmet, and covered with a silver mask, struck across the cosmic sky and slaughtered. Iron hoof flattened in all directions. Elder Moose felt the spread of Jin Ge's killing in the wooden coffin, and nodded his head and said, "Mist Shuang, this person is the former warlord Wu Kong of Taiyin God. It's a little lower, only 8 stars, less than the trace level, but fortunately, rich experience in actual combat, lifelong killing, and going through thousands of battles. If you can make it a corpse, you will definitely have a personal protection general in the future." Jian Wushuang nodded after hearing the words. Without much hesitation, he took his hand off the wooden coffin cover and headed to the second coffin next to it. Although Jian Wushuang's void universe is this time to help the gods of the earth to inquire about the news, there are ways to improve their strength now. Naturally, they will not be missed. It is easy. According to the chat between Jian Wushuang and Elder Moose along the way, he also learned that once the corpse in this coffin had been refined, this corpse would never betray forever except in extreme circumstances. Along the way, no matter whether it is a relative or a friend, you may turn your face for a chance, a good fortune, and fight hard, endlessly. But the corpse in this coffin is not. It can be said that once the corpse belonging to itself is refined, then this corpse is equivalent to one of your strongest avatars. The second coffin is a bamboo coffin. When Jian Wushuang put his hand up, he heard the Elder Feng said, "The corpse in this bamboo coffin is a contemporary sage of 1,000 moons before the Haoyue Xianmen. Created a feat of 8-star cultivation, charmed a trace-level virtual man, lured him. Wushuang, if you can refine this corpse, it will also be a huge improvement for you, and you can use it as an unexpected dark chess." However, after experiencing it carefully, Jian Wushuang still shook his head, took his hand away, and walked towards the third coffin. Still dissatisfied? Elder Moose Wind frowned. In his opinion, the two corpses just now have a high degree of agreement with Jian Wushuang. Once repaired is not too high, Jian Wushuang is easy to control refining. There is a corpse of gods, who were all gifted superiors during their lifetime. Although they died horizontally, their growth was extremely high. If Jian Wushuang can refine it at this time, it will inevitably become the left and right arm of Jian Wushuang in the future. However, he knows nothing. In fact, the sword is unparalleled. If it is calculated according to the realm of the two universes, it is already a mark-level false soldier. For the two swords just now, refining will not provide any help. After a series of 5 coffins, Jian Wushuang all stayed for a short time before shaking his head without hesitation. After half an hour, Jian Wushuang had already reached the mid-mountainside position of the coffin hill. Among the 5 coffins, there are Tianjiao, who was amazingly talented during his lifetime, but was strangled, and there are extreme gods of war in all directions, but they have not entered the eyes of Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, Elder Feng's brows could not help but frown. "Miss Double, don't look down." Finally, Elder Moose could not help but whispered. Jian Wushuang heard the words and looked back at Elder Moose Wind, then touched his nose and said, "Elder Moose Wind, I have something in mind." "What's in your heart?" Elder Moose Feng couldn't help but laughed a little and murmured in his heart, "Okay, look at that seat, what kind of body will you choose?" With this idea in mind, Elder Moose simply stopped talking and closed his eyes to let Jian Wushuang choose. Time passes slowly. Jian Wushuang has reached the position of the middle of the mountain. At this position, there are fewer and fewer Tianjiao who once shined in the universe but were strangled by various circumstances. Instead, there are some truly in the universe. Suppressing the invincible power of 9 days and 10 places, trace-level virtual men. In terms of combat power, this cosmology is higher than the native land of swordless warriors, and more powerful than the strong ones. However, It is still the master of the universe that can storm the sky and control one side of the universe. Jian Wushuang's speed slowed down. He no longer just touched some coffins, but felt the corpse repaired in the coffin and chose to leave. He started a process of thinking. When Elder Moose thought that Jian Wushuang would be in this position, when selecting some corpses, Jian Wushuang's footsteps went up again. One trace. Second trace. Jian Wushuang's footsteps have not stopped. www. Novel. The idiot who is not greedy enough to swallow elephants. The Moose-Wind Elder immediately felt itchy, and his impression of the sword unparalleled fell sharply. You know, Jian Wushuang is picking the sword corpse. In fact, from another perspective, the corpse is also picking the sword. Previously, those corpses were still low, and they were almost allowed to be screened by Jian Wushuang. It would be good if they wanted to take the refining directly. At the middle of the coffin, there are some 1 and 2 marked corpses, although the realm of his life far surpassed Jian Wushuang. In theory, Jian Wushuang can never be refined. But Jian Wushuang's talent is amazing, but it is a black light, enough to stand by with the ancestors of the refining gods, and these scarred corpses are not impossible to be refined by the sword. But seeing Jian Wushuang like this, clearly is the rhythm to reach the summit. Isn't this stupid? Chapter 4471. Wu Shuang, because of your greed, you have been gifted in vain. Elder Moose-Wind sighed. In the face of Jian Wushuang, he has the cherishment of talents, otherwise he would not have spoken directly under the gate of the Lianshanzong mountain to protect the sword, and brought it back to the Lianshanzong, omitting countless tedious steps in the middle. At present, the refining Shanzong seems to be powerful and dominate the party, but it is already green and yellow, and no one succeeds. In his opinion, Jian Wushuang is the one who can provoke the sacred beams in the future. As he kept thinking, Jian Wushuang had crossed the mountainside and continued to walk towards the top of the mountain. And he is extremely close to the top of the mountain. A coffin made by Xian Bing appeared in front of the sword without double sides. Before approaching the coffin, Jian Wushuang felt a chill rushing towards him, and in that chill, mixed with expectation. Jian Wushuang's brow lifted, a flash of strangeness flashed in his eyes. Immediately, Jian Wushuang stretched out his hand and pressed one against the coffin cover of the Xianbing coffin. Boom! In that room, there was a shock on the entire coffin, and a huge corpse was rushed out of the Xianbing coffin. This monstrous corpse gas is like smoke and tide. It will burst out of the sky thousands of miles in an instant, forming a huge dark cloud swirling together. It was only an instant that Jian Wushuang felt the repair of the corpse in this coffin. 5 marks scum. 5 marks, corresponding to the half-step invincible supreme. Moreover, because of the existence of the associated supernatural power of the virtual explosion, the 5-marked virtual soldier is better than the half-step invincible supreme. Suddenly, Elder Moose trembled, his eyes rounded. Born by nature, take the initiative to recognize the Lord. Elder Moose's eyes flashed and stared. At this moment, he had decided to stop talking and let Jian Wushuang eat a delicious Moose-Wind Elder, and hurriedly bearded and said, Wushuang, what are you still doing? Are you still hurrying to refine this corpse? I will tell you that it is very rare to take the initiative to recognize the Lord. Once you miss this time, you will never encounter it again. Moreover, this is a 5-mark vain priest. This life was before this master, in terms of strength and identity, is no longer under this seat. If you can refine him, then you can become our refining upper character. From now on, no one can bully you. This is not much. The most important thing is that if you also reach the 5 scenes realm and completely refine the corpse of this master, then it means that you will have the same realm as you. Helper. Speaking of the back, Elder Feng's eyes skyrocketed in the eyes of Elder Feng, and they were all crazy. You know, his corpse now is only 4 marks. And this corpse has been upgraded to 4 marks, which is already the limit of this corpse. However, at the moment, Jian Wushuang can directly conquer the corpse of a 5-marked vagrant, which means that as long as the sword Wushuang can reach the 5-marked level, this corpse can reach at least 5-marked level. It is even possible to reach 6 marks. Although the difficulty of promotion between the 5 marks and 6 marks is almost like a heaven and the opportunities are very slim, but it does not mean that there is no chance at all. To be honest, even when seeing this scene, even Elder Moose could not sit still and felt jealous. Inside the coffin, Shan Wu's eyes twinkled, and his thoughts resurfaced. I have to say that he was tempted at the moment. 5 marks, invincible in half steps. The strength of this realm, even Jian Wushuang's ability to deal with it today, is only a 60% chance of winning. My own strength is the elementary supremacy, that is, a trace-level virtual warrior. I can walk here and conquer the 5-mark virtual warrior. I'm afraid it is already the limit. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked up. There were only a few coffins at the top of the coffin hill. The breath was extremely horrible, let alone going to the refinement, it was extremely difficult to approach. Well, just this corpse. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and slowly reached out his hand, intending to push open the lid of Xianbing coffin. Seeing this scene, Elder Moose Wind, because he has seen a lot of strong winds and waves, at this moment in his eyes cannot help but look forward to a spark of excitement. He could already imagine how Jian Wushuang refined this 5-marked corpse, then struck the universe, and even attacked those evil species in a different universe. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to open the cover of the Xianbing coffin, it was about to happen. The tailored Excalibur hanging around his waist trembled suddenly. The next moment, an incomparably old and kind voice sounded in his ear. "I'm waiting for you." Boom! Suddenly, Jian Wu's double body trembled, and he pulled his hand pressed against the lid of Xianbing coffin. He heard the call of people from hometown. This call comes from the top of the mountain. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wu's eyes filled with firmness, and he hesitated toward the top of the mountain without hesitation. "Yu Wushuang, stop here quickly." Elder Moose Wind suddenly screamed and jumped anxiously. "Mist Shuang, what are you doing?" "Stop." Swordless Wu stepped back, looked back at Elder Moose Wind, and calmly said, "Elder Moose Wind, this corpse is not what I want most. It disappoints you." After that, Jian Wushuang didn't say much, and walked towards the top of the mountain step by step. "Crazy lunatic! Wushuang, are you crazy?" Elder Moose Wind barked suddenly. Watching Jian Wushuang really did not hesitate, he couldn't help but say, "Burning the heavens, Wushuang, you are violently heaven." Having said that, Elder Moose Wind saw Jian Wushuang's deafening look, and he couldn't help sighing and screaming violent heavenly things. Jian Wushuang's feet were heavy, and he went to the top of the mountain step by step. A huge wave of coercion emanated from several coffins on the top of the mountain, like the tide of the sea, waves of waves slamming towards him, and he wanted to shoot him down the coffin. These coercion, although it was the unconscious distribution of these 6-marked virtual men, died. But still not what Jian Wushuang can resist. He felt as if he were carrying hundreds of millions of mountains, stepping forward step by step. Chaos Overlord. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and directly urged Chaos Ba. The use of divine power will be repelled by this universe, and will also be noticed by the Elder Wind Moose, but the chaotic domineering body is the power of the physical body, and this will not happen. Ha! Jian Wushuang stepped down every step, all stepped on a large pit of 100 meters in the coffin hill. "Come on, I'm waiting for you. Come on, I'm waiting for you. Come on. I am waiting for you." Boom boom. As Jian Wushuang got closer and closer to the top of the coffin mountain, the softer call also became stronger and stronger. In the end, it has turned into a thunderous sound like a rolling thunder, which exploded in the mind of Sword Unparalleled. Finally, Jian Wushuang reached the top. Chapter 4472. Sword Unparalleled reached the top. At the top of the coffin mountain, a black iron coffin full of mysterious patterns is enclosed by 4 chains and is suspended in the air. "I'm waiting for you." A thunderous roar resounded in Jian Wushuang's mind. The Taro Excalibur hanging on the sword's waist, constantly humming, trembling violently. If Fei Wuxuang had completely controlled the Taro Excalibur, I'm afraid that this Taro Excalibur has been shot out and rushed into this coffin. At this moment, although Jian Wuxuang has not yet opened the coffin in his heart, he basically understood who the person in the coffin was. It is only him that will cause the shock of the Terra sword. But wasn't he dead in the hands of the emperor? How could the body be here? Jian Wuxuang's brow frowned, and the light in his eyes kept blinking. Elder Moose Feng stepped in the void and looked at this scene from afar. The expression on his face kept converging and turned into a dignity. Mist Shuang, stop, this corpse is not for you. Elder Moose's expression was somber, said Shin. Back to his sword Wuxuang, when Yen raised an eyebrow, pressed the shout in the coffin, turned to look at Elder Moose and asked, Elder Moose, what does this mean? Elder Moose Wind heard a glance at Jian Wuxuang and immediately said, this corpse of God is not our universe. Not people in our universe? Jian Wuxuang's heart moved, and faintly understood that perhaps at this moment, it was the best time to probe the news. Therefore, Jian Wuxuang pretended to understand. Elder Moose Wind, I don't understand what it means. Elder Moose heard the words, he couldn't help flashing a hesitation in his eyes, and immediately looked around. Seeing that no one was nearby, he suddenly waved his right hand, endless virtual power poured out, forming an enchantment, wrapping him with the sword. Shuang, there are some things that I shouldn't have told you, but you have amazing talents. You want to be able to achieve universe-level power in the future. Knowing that these things are just a matter of time, I will make an exception with you today. Talk about it. Jian Wuxuang heard his face look awkward, knowing that the topic was coming. I saw the voice of Elder Moose was low, his eyes looked far away, and he said, Mist Shuang, our universe is not the only one. The Void and Forbidden Ground are connected to many cave worlds. These cave sky worlds form their own world, but in general, these cave sky worlds are very small and not much larger than a star field. However, in some of the nodes in the Forbidden Land, the road is a real behemoth, a real universe. No matter the degree of civilization or the overall combat power, this universe is just weaker than us. This universe, we collectively call it the Divine Power Universe. Divine Power Universe? Jian Wuxuang's pupils shrank, and this Divine Power Universe should refer to his native universe. Yes, this magical universe is rich in resources and boundless. Among them, Tianjiao is born and power is born. Our universe and the magical universe have successively fought over 100,000 chaos ages. Elder Moose nodded his head, turning his gaze to the dark coffin that was bound by chains and suspended in midair, and continued, this coffin corpse comes from the divine universe opposite the void. This person obviously has only a 4-mark level, but if it comes to strength, it is a 6-mark giant that is enough to kill our world. I heard that this person is the opposite of the Divine Power Universe, the first Kendo Supreme that has never been seen in history. It is the opposite universe that suppresses the invincible existence of 9 days and 10 places. Speaking of which, the fall of this person was also an accident. At that time, the Emperor Devourer led the Devourer organization to the divine universe opposite him. He had just encountered this person on the way to the divine universe. Although this person is powerful, compared to the Emperor Eater, it is not a star that is worse than the Emperor. Therefore, after a war, the person fell into the hands of the Emperor. We refined the Lord of the sect, and bought the corpse of this person from the Emperor at a large price. The genius of this corpse is so talented and powerful that it is far from being comparable to our scorching virtuoso. Originally, the Lord bought him back, but also tried to refine it and become our sacred corpse of the sect of the sacred god. However, this person's obsession is so great that even after his death, he will not be reduced by half. The Lord and our 5 elders refined this corpse together, and they could not even refine it. Therefore, this corpse has been resting here. Elder Feng Wen said slowly, then turned his eyes, looked at Jian Wuxuang, shook his head and said, So, Wuxuang, give up this corpse of God, and don't do nothing for nothing. Jian Wuxuang heard the words, his eyes flashed for a while. That's it. At the same time, Jian Wuxuang quickly thought in his mind. If you refine Taro Supreme, you are equivalent to Taro Supreme reborn and resurrected in another way. At that time, even if he fails to explore the deployment of the virtual universe's combat power against them, he can bring Tai Luo Supreme back to the native universe. Once the war end breaks out, it is also a strong main force. The most important thing is that he got the full inheritance of Tai Luo Supreme. According to a certain degree, Tai Luo Supreme has been counted as his half-master. How can he bear his heart and see Tai Luo Supreme's corpse, placed in a different universe, allowing people to choose and refine? Can't bear it. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wu's eyes flashed a decisive color, and he looked at the Moose Elder and said in a deep voice, "Elder Moose Wind, I have made a decision, and I will refine this alien." Elder Moose heard the words, and immediately became angry. Dare to waste your lips and say so much, all for nothing? It's really stubborn. Well, Wushuang, you'll take a look at this one. This corpse cannot be refined by the Lord and our 5 elders. How can you refine it? Elder Moose Wind, even with a good temper, felt an irritation in his heart at this moment. With a flick of his sleeve, Elder Moose snorted and stopped talking. Jian Wushuang smiled apologetically at him, then took a deep breath, stretched out his hand and placed it on the dark coffin in front of him. Alas! It's like dropping a stone on the calm lake surface. Click, click. The iron chain that was tied to the dark coffin suddenly broke down inch by inch. Immediately he saw the thick black coffin cover full of mysterious patterns, and then moved sideways. Crunchy, crunchy. A harsh sound sounded. The lid of the vertical coffin was completely moved sideways. Next moment, Sword Wushuang looked up sharply and stared into the coffin. I saw a figure in a blue shirt with eyes closed, his fingers crossed, and quietly placed on his waist. Chapter 4473. It wasn't anyone else who was quietly lying in the coffin, it was Taro Supreme. He had a handsome face, his nose was dangling, his eyes were closed, and a pair of sword eyebrows flew straight to the horns, and the whole man was full of sharpness. At first glance, he seemed to be not sleeping, but sleeping. Buzz. At this moment, the Terra Excalibur shook to the extreme. Jian Wushuang froze slightly. He did not expect that Tai Luo Supreme was so young. No wonder it is as strong as Wu Jianxian, all dumped for it. Jian Wushuang can already imagine that Tai Luo Supreme relied on the sword to stretch his face, and the chic appearance of drunkenness in the world would surely make countless people fall over. So arrogant. Jian Wushuang shook his head and felt regretful. Elder Wind, what's next? Elder Moose Wind glared at him and snorted, Mist Shuang, don't you put the words of this seat in your ears? This seat thought you had hard wings, so you don't need the discipline of this seat. What are you doing now? Come and ask me how to refine the corpse? Jian Wushuang heard this, pretending to laugh. Elder Moose, you laughed. Where can I dare not accept your discipline? But I am always greedy and want the best of everything. Well, greed is not enough to swallow elephants. This sentence I have told you several times. Elder Moose Wind shook his head, and then sighed softly. Well, if you try it. This seat will now teach you the method of corpse refining. Having said that, Elder Moose Wind flicked his fingers. A glaucoma suddenly burst out, and fell into the heart of Jian Wushuang's eyebrows. Immediately, a method of how to make corpses was opened in Jian Wushuang's mind. This method is not complicated or complicated. The most important thing is that through virtual force, you must first reach the divine corpse to make a painstaking connection, then input instructions to make it obedient, and finally refine it day and night to make it thoroughly keep it for your own use. Jian Wushuang turned around and sat down with his back to the Elder Wind, knees slowly closed, and his face was pensive. This corpse refining method is not very complicated for Jian Wushuang, but if you look at it briefly, you can get through. But its biggest difficulty is that Jian Wushuang has no virtual power at all. The key to this set of corpse refining methods is also the most basic thing, that is, it is necessary to first refine the corpse and then make a connection. You can only try with divine power. Jian Wu's eyes flashed for a while, and then he made a decision in his heart. Theoretically, divine power and imaginary power are both derived from an energy in the universe, which should not be a problem. Do it when you think of it. Jian Wushuang's hands blasted out, and a sudden force of magic, like a river flowing from his palm like a tide, penetrated into the body of Tai Luo Supreme. In a short time, the sword waist card of Jian Wushuang jumped, and a psychedelic power poured out. From the outsider's perspective, the magic power of Jian Wushuang suddenly became no different from the virtual force. Really go for refining? Elder Feng's brows jumped, and his face was chaotic. Shuang 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 shuang, this seat is waiting for you to have a gray nose, and a gray face is looking for this seat. Shaking his head, Elder Moose began to observe sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang's divine power, as soon as he entered the body of Tai Luo Supreme, felt an extremely powerful obsession. This obsession is like a hedgehog who is fully armed and does not allow anyone to invade. However, when Jian Wushuang's divine power touched Tai Luo Supreme's obsession, in a moment, the obsession collapsed. The call of the Supreme Lord in Jian Wushuang's mind disappeared, like a nerve that had been strained for a long time, and at this moment it finally broke off. Jian Wushuang understands that the former Tai Luo Supreme has been waiting for someone who is not in this universe to take away his corpse. He was so glorious in his lifetime that he never wanted to be a puppet in the hands of someone in another universe. He raised a lion puppet to attack the native universe he was guarding. Now he's waiting. Jian Wushuang is the most suitable person for him and the person he wants to wait for most. Jian Wushuang didn't say a word silently. At this moment he finally realized something, how sad and how worthy of the martyrs who died in the extraterritorial battlefield to protect the universe. Refining was smoother than Jian Wushuang imagined. Without any obstacle at all, Jian Wushuang completed the refining step by step. In a short time, the dim and faint corpse of Tai Luo Supreme God began to gradually light up. What? Elder Moose Feng was shocked, his eyes widened, and his face flashed with dullness. This corpse has been refined by this boy? The elders of our 5 elders, together with the suzerain, are helpless corpses of gods, so they were easily refined by this boy? Elder Moose's mouth widened gradually to be able to put an egg, and the whole person was lost. Boom boom. A ray of golden light continued to shine from Taro's supreme corpse. Feet, hands. The next moment, a golden light suddenly shot from Tai Luo Supreme. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion spread, and the endless corpse gas rose into the sky, forming a billowing black cloud. Taro Supreme opened his eyes suddenly. However, in his eyes, there was nothing pleasing, a stiffness and numbness. Jian Wushuang tried to enter a command in Taro Supreme, and Taro Supreme raised his hand. Instantly, Tai Luo Supreme raised his right hand. Then, Jian Wushuang tried to make Tai Luo Supreme Corpse perform other complicated actions, and it suddenly became stiff and obscure. It seems that only continuous refinement can truly make Tai Luo's Supreme Corpse, such as arm instructions. There was a smile on the corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth. Still, his heart was overjoyed. Too extreme. This is undefeated in all battles. In the universe, it has won a great reputation, it has awe-inspiring universe, and it has swept across 9 days and 10 places. Such an existence, at this moment, was even refined by the sword, unparalleled sword, and became a corpse under his control. It can be said that Jian Wushuang's strength, at this moment, has soared in general. And this is not the real ecstasy of Jian Wushuang. The reason for Jian Wushuang's real ecstasy is that he did not let Tai Luo Supreme fall into the hands of these aliens in the universe. To Tai Luo Supreme, Jian Wushuang is respected from the bottom of his heart. It can be said that Jian Wushuang has gone all the way to now, because the existence of Supreme Master Luo has helped him tremendously. Regardless of whether it is a Terra Sword or a Terra Sword Code, in the crisis of mortal death again and again, the danger is around, and the Jedi fights back. Jian Wushuang was extremely respectful to Tai Luo, from beginning to end, still holding a grateful heart. For most of the reasons, he used Taylor Supreme as the corpse, because he did not want to see Taylor Supreme lying alone here, and then did not know when he would wait until the obsession disappeared gradually and was refined by people in this universe. Disaster. This is not happening now. He will make Tai Luo Supreme, who has fallen, rebloom his glory in the universe. Chapter 4474, Puff. With the instruction of Jian Wushuang, Tai Luo Supreme stepped out of the coffin, walked in the air, and landed behind Jian Wushuang, like a shadow following the shadow. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes and glanced at the glorious glance of Tai Luo Supreme. Mist Shuang, did you really refine him? Elder Moose's eyes widened and asked inconceivably. I guess it should be. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and replied. Elder Moose heard the news, and could not help but feel lost, and then gave a bitter laugh, shook his head and said, Is this the treatment of genius? I waited for the 5 elders and the corpse that the master could not refine in your hands. It was so easy to be refined. Mist Shuang, I will report to the suzerain later. Let's go, I will take you back to your dormitory now. It is good. Sword Wushuang nodded. Subsequently, Jian Wushuang followed behind the Elder Wind, and swept away toward the palace. Tai Luo Supreme returned to the coffin and was held up by the sword unparalleled. Along the way, many practitioners of the refining gods who were sitting cross-legged on the ground practicing their cultivation, raised their eyes to see the Elder Wind Elder and Sword Wushuang passing by in the air, and their eyes were full of surprise. Immediately, a murmur of discussions rang from the mouth of the disciples of Lian Xinzong. I heard that this time the introductory disciple selection, we have a talent that can be compared with the disciples of our ancestors who practiced the divine sect. They were taken away by Elder Moose on the spot, but this person? It should be what I want. Elder Moose is really fond of him. I neglected a series of tedious steps and took him to the coffin mountain to select the corpse. The coffin that was held behind this person just now should have been picked by this person in the coffin hill? I never saw that coffin, and I don't know which corpse is inside. The discussion sounded, and everyone was a little curious. At this moment, an extremely experienced disciple of Xinzong, looking at the coffin raised behind Jian Wushuang, his pupils narrowed sharply, as if he found something, and screamed in shock. This is the first coffin placed on the top of the coffin hill. This corpse in the coffin can't be refined even by the Lord Sovereign, but was obtained by this person? When this remark came to an end, it suddenly felt like a stone stirred up 1,000 layers of waves. Almost all the disciples flashed an unbelievable color in their eyes, and their faces turned dull. Who does not know the legend of the coffin mountain in the refining deities? As a result, the news of Jian Wushuang refining the corpse of the first coffin sacrifice spread wildly, shaking with enthusiasm. Without both sides of the sword, they set foot on refining Xinzong and became famous. The size of the refining Xinzong is far beyond the imagination of Jian Wushuang. It may seem like a mountain peak, but in fact, it is much larger than a few star fields. Fortunately, both Elder Moose Wind and Jian Wushuang Xiu are not low. Under the leadership of Elder Moose Wind, they soon arrived at the palace of Jian Wushuang. There, it is a tall stone mountain. The architecture of the entire mountain is somewhat similar to a honeycomb. On the mountain wall, it is full of dense, potty black caves. Elder Wind said, Mist Shuang, this is the place where ordinary disciples who practice Xinzong live and practice, also known as corpses. The corpses are full of power and vitality. They can help you practice and refine the corpses. There is also a great benefit to warming up the dead body. It seems that the elders of the Moose Wind and the Sword Unparalleled have been censed, and many disciples of the refining gods have come out of the corpse hole. Their faces were pale, their eyes were empty, and the whole man was filled with a gloomy atmosphere. See Elder Wind 2. When these disciples saw that they were the elders of Moose Wind, they immediately saluted. You're welcome. Elder Moose Wind nodded slightly at them and sent them back. Later, Elder Moose continued to say to Jian Wushuang, Let's go, he'll take you to the top of the mountain, and I remember that there are just a few top corpses in there. Having said that, Elder Moose raised his sword Wushuang, stepped on it, and disappeared in place. When it appeared again, it was already on the top of the mountain. There are not many corpses on the top of the mountain. There are only 9 corpses. They are not densely packed like the bottom of the mountain and the mountainside, but each corpse is at least 100 miles away, and it is unprecedentedly huge. A strong body of corpse seemed to have condensed into the essence. Blowing his nose from the corpse hole, Jian Wushuang could not help but feel a little discomfort and frowned. Seeing this, Elder Feng Feng nodded with satisfaction and smiled. Well, sword unparalleled, you go in. Remember, in the face of the corpse of God, do not have any insults, you should respect. They will the most trustworthy person in your world, even the closest relative, is still there. Finally, you have to take a rest for a few days these days. This seat is now going to report the situation like the suzerain. After this time, this seat will pick you up and meet the suzerain. After speaking, Shirmaran's sleeve robe waved and Shiren went. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and walked towards the corpse hole step by step. The corpse hole looks simple, but in fact there is no other hole in it. When Jian Wushuang stepped in, he felt a strong void and corpse. There was a hall, a palace, a practice room, and so on. The candles made from the dragon grass are never extinguished, and the burning smoke can help people to rest in peace while practicing. Jian Wushuang did not rest in a hurry, but placed the coffin of Tai Luo Supreme respectfully and began to inspect the corpse hole inch by inch to see if there was a similar surveillance ban. After confirming everything, Jianwu both breathed a sigh of relief, banged at the door, and cut off all his breath. At midnight, a round of demonized blood moons hung high in the sky, and the low roar of the corpse Xiaoye continued to be heard in Xianshan's corpse cave. It is located inside one of the 7 corpses on the top of Shiyan Mountain. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on a stone bed calmly thinking. The candles made from the scented dragon scent continued to melt and burn, and a hint of green smoke rose. Speaking of it, until now, he still hasn't fully figured out how he passed the test of the test bedrock yesterday and achieved an appalling qualification. He remembered that the scanning power of the test bedrock at that time had begun to recede, and almost the next step would be a warning sound similar to that when the ram tested the bedrock. At that moment, the seal of the 3 snakes on his neck suddenly loosened. Then, the testing and scanning power of the trial cornerstone was introduced into the seal of the 3-headed snake. That is to say, I can pass the test and have achieved the superb qualification of refining Shinzong. Thanks to Lulu? Jian Wushuang murmured to himself, could not help but feel a little dumb. Chapter 4475. Moon stars are rare and corpses roar. After a while of contemplation, Jian Wushuang spread his divine power again and found that no one was nearby, and gently pulled the token given by Zhou God from his waist with his right hand. This token can not only cover the breath of divine power on him, but also communicate with the of the universe across the universe and report the situation. Alas! I saw a ripple like a water mirror suddenly on the token. Immediately, I heard a mild and slightly worried voice. How are you, Jian Wushuang? Immediately, the lens was swiped up, and the face of Zhou God appeared in the water mirror. There is no change in his appearance, but there is more fatigue in his eyes. I do indeed need to guess and guess. This time, the of the universe must work hard. Going back to the of the universe, I have officially entered the refining God sect. Wu Jianshou stepped back a few steps and arched his hands toward the of the sky. Oh, have you entered the refining sect? God Zhou heard the words, his face flashed with a slight surprise, and said, Before, the Ram Supreme returned to the old man and said that you went to participate in the selection of the refining deities, but it turned out that he couldn't care about you and had to escape first. The old man thought you had run away. Wu Jinshuang heard the words, could not help but grin, and shook his head. It's a long story. Immediately, Jian Wushuang spoke sharply and said, Master God, then it seems that the Ram Supreme is all right? The of the water in the token water mirror nodded and replied, Yes, the old man has made contact with the Ram Supreme and the Ice Supreme. Both of them have nothing to do and have escaped from the pursuit of the refining gods. Morocco Supreme? Escape from hunting? Wu Jianshuang heard a sneer in his heart. This guy didn't even come to participate in the selection of Shenzong. Why talk about escaping the hunt? He shook his head, and Jian Wushuang did not intend to explain this to the of the universe, but Shinshin asked, Master God of the universe, what about the Supreme Spirit Jade? Lingyu Supreme. After a moment of silence, the god of Wuzhou said, the old man tried to contact him many times, but unfortunately he didn't respond. I was afraid that he had been secretly executed by Lian Shenzong. Is that so? Wu Jianwushuang sighed slightly. Lingyu Supreme gave him a good impression, but he could not escape the magic palm of the refining god. Gu Jianwushuang speculated in his heart that I was afraid that it would not take long before he could see Linjia's supreme corpse in the coffin. It is just that he has taken away Taro Supreme, and if he takes Lingyu Supreme again, they are all aliens and will inevitably be suspected. After sighing for a while, Jian Wushuang revealed his recent situation to the gods of the universe and Pan. When the god of Zhou heard that Jian Wushuang saw Tai Luo Supreme in the coffin hill, Yun Qing's face always had a flash of anger. The jerk! The old man also suspected that, even if Tai Luo wasn't the emperor's opponent, he shouldn't have disappeared so quickly, leaving no traces of falling down. I didn't expect to be sold as a corpse and sold to refine Shenzong. Suddenly, when the god of Zhou heard that the supreme corpse of Tai Luo had been taken away by Jian Wushuang from the coffin and the refining of the coffin, his face slowly eased. Looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes, he turned into satisfaction and comfort. Afterwards, the two talked a few more words. God Zhou instructed Jian Wushuang to take precautions while refining Shenzong. This is the most important thing. Second, let Jian Wushuang be able to protect himself without taking risks under the circumstances. Try to inquire about the virtual universe's combat deployment against their universe, and the people who previously attacked the universe, which side of the virtual universe belongs to it. There is also a crack node in the void that they passed through, and the native universe they entered. After a while, Jian Wushuang ended the call with the of the universe. Howl. In the Yanxian Mountains, the sound of the corpse watching the moon and howling, as the night gradually deepens, the frequency becomes higher and higher, and then dawn and dawn gradually disappear. The next morning, alas! A powerful knocking sounded outside the door of the corpse hole where Jian Sword Wushuang was located. Okay. Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes, waved his right hand, waved a prohibition, and said lightly, please come in. Soon after the sound of the words fell, I saw a scarred dummy with a sickle head entering from the corpse hole. Miss Shuang, why are you so cautious? This is refining Shenzong, and you need to arrange so many restrictions? A sound of laughter sounded. Su Shi's sickle head narrowed, his eyes narrowed, meaning he looked at Jian Wushuang inexplicably. Elder Shin Sickle. Wu Jianshou looked calm and saluted him slightly. This man was the one who wanted to kill him outside the gate of Lian Shenzong Mountain. Elder Shinxian visited suddenly. Is there anything wrong? Wu Jianshou said faintly. He can feel a little hostility on this Elder Sickle. Miss Shuang, can't you come to visit if this seat is all right? Elder Shinshin Sickle looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, his mouth slightly raised upward. I came to see you this time. One is to see how you are doing. The other is to come and tell you a message. What news? Wu Jianshou asked lightly. There was a faint flash of light in the eyes of Elder Shinshen, and then he said, Miss Shuang, do you remember the people who accompanied you? One of them has been arrested and executed. When he said this, Elder Shinsickle stared at Jian Wushuang, wanting to see anything unusual from Jian Wushuang's face. However, he was disappointed. Wu Jianshuang's expression was calm from the beginning to the end, without the slightest rhetorical question. Oh, what does that have to do with me? Elder Wu Shinsickle did not speak, but looked at Jian Wushuang deeply. Only half a while later he only smiled and said, It doesn't matter, this seat just came to inform you. It's just a pity that the man didn't reveal half a minute of other news before he died, and finally broke out. Elder Shinshin said as he shook his head, as if booing. Wu Jianshuang did not answer, but just looked at Elder Shinsickle. Okay Wu Shuang, since you are fine, then this seat will go first. Oh yeah, I almost forgot I forgot to congratulate you and refined our first corpse of Shinzong. Hey, the strong obsession in this corpse, even the 5 elders. There is no way for the monarch and the master to be able to refine it so smoothly, it is strange. He shook his head, and Elder Shinxian left his corpse with a negative hand. A long time after the Elder Shinxian left. Huh? Wu Jianshou slammed the bed with his right hand. His original calm face was instantly gloomy to the extreme. How he couldn't guess, just now the Elder Shinxian pretended to visit him, but in fact, he wanted to catch him and deliberately test it. For this person, he did not believe in his sword unparalleled, and did not believe in the results of the trial. This person must die, otherwise my risk is too great. Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes and looked at the back of the Elder Shin sickle. Chapter 4476. Elder Godshin's sickle must die. It's just that it's difficult to kill him without knowing it, and can't make people doubt him. Wu Jian's eyes flickered, and after thinking for a long time, he could not think of any good way. This matter needs to be considered from a long-term perspective. You must not act recklessly, otherwise you will fail. You will be burned. Wu Jianshou shook his head and said. At the same time, he was slightly relieved in his heart. It was not a bad thing for Elder Shinxian to come to him just now. At least the swordsman now knew that there would be a pair of eyes watching him secretly, so that he would become more cautious in his actions. Alas! The candles in the corpse cave continued to burn, and blue smoke rose up. Wu Jian sat cross-legged, and began to continuously research the weakness, refining Tai Luo Supreme by the way. When he went to the corpse hole, Jian Wushuang knocked side by side, and asked the Elder Shinxian to ask for a book on virtual force. The book detailedly analyzed the structure and analysis of virtual force. Virtual power, like divine power, is an energy between the universe. Essentially, there is no difference between virtual power and divine power, but they are both a means of exerting magical powers, but it is because the laws and rules of the two universes are different, resulting in their particle, atom, electron, and proton structure. There are different changes. That is to say, as long as I can figure out the deepest structure of divine power or virtual force, sort the particles, atoms, electrons, and protons, and regroup the changes, I can convert the divine power into virtual power, or put virtual power is transformed into divine power. Yan Jian's eyes twinkled, thinking quickly in his mind. This is simple to say, but it is extremely difficult to operate in essence. The structural combinations contained in imaginary or divine power are at least billions of times, and the number of combinations they can disrupt again is an infinite number. This is like 100 million permuted numbers. If you want to constantly regroup them, it is best to match a perfect number. It requires effort and is simply an impossible task. Even if I am supreme today, it can take 10 billion times to deduct in one thought, and it will take an extremely long time to get a correct result. Wu Jian's eyes were so bright that he began to think about the feasibility in his head. First of all, the first thing I need to understand is the structural components of virtual force. This requires a lot of effort and time to deduct. Secondly, I have to disrupt all these structural components, and then match the structural components of divine power. Only after the structural components of virtual power and divine power are fully understood, can they try to convert divine power into virtual power. It took me too long to go through the deductions one by one, and now I don't have this time to waste. This refining Godzongui is the top gate of the virtual universe. If you want to come to the gate, you should have a similar library. The existence of the cabinet, I might as well go to the library first, to find if there are books about the most primitive structural components of Su Li. Yan Jian's eyes blinked, and he took a deep breath and stood up. The next moment, Jian Wushuang strode out of the corpse hole and swept away towards Shiyan Mountain. Beneath Yanxian Mountain, a voluptuous woman with an enchanting body, wearing cool thin silk and a cat-eared foxtail, was walking out of the corpse hole. Finally broke through Samsung. This enchanting woman stretched her waist and stretched her body. A pair of long, white and straight legs were looming in the silk. Combined with the laziness of her face, It was very moving and imaginative. Well, suddenly a flash of wind flashed, and the figure of Jian Wushuang appeared in front of her. "Hello, may I ask where is the library?" Wu Jianshuang asked quite politely. The stunned woman heard the words, her beautiful eyes flowed, she looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Well, who are you? Why have I never seen you in the Shiyan mountain?" Wu Jianshuang arched back and said, "Girl, Shiyan Shan, who came only yesterday, is normal if you don't know me." "Oh," the enchanting woman blinked her eyes quite playfully, and then patted her head immediately, shouting, "Ah, I know. Did you just enter the sect recently and have a super qualified Wushuang?" "You know me?" Wu Jianshou raised his eyebrows. The enchanting woman suddenly pursed her mouth and said, "Isn't it? Recently I was in retreat, and I always heard someone say outside the corpse cave. We have refined the God sect, and came with a talented genius, loved by Elder Wind. It's so noisy that I can't retreat well." "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and replied, "That's really embarrassing." When I heard Jian Wushuang's regretful words, the enchanting woman seemed a little unhappy and waved her hand. "Okay, it's not your business." After saying that, the enchanting woman's beautiful eyes turned and said, "Oh, Wushuang, you just said you were going to the library, right?" "Yes." Jian Wushuang nodded. "Oh, Wushuang, this girl kindly reminds you that it is best not to go to the library now." But Wu Jianshuang raised his eyebrows curiously. "Don't understand? Not to mention, the girl just mentioned you a few words." The enchanting woman slanted Jian Wushuang at one glance and hummed softly, "Mist Shuang, in our case, there are 6 veins in total. The elders of the 5 elders each have 1 vein, and the suzerain 1. These 6 pulse disciples, on the face of each other, have nothing to do with, but in fact they are their own faction party feathers, secretly fighting continuously. You are brought back from the ancestor by Elder Moose Wind. In theory, you should belong to the Elder Moose Wind. It's just that Elder Moose's pulse is a bit special, because people are thin and hardly a faction, and several disciples under his hands are included in the other 5 pulses. Today's 5 pulse disciples are all gathered in the library at this moment to discuss the Zhongmin Dabi issue in the near future. If you go to the library at this moment, you will be caught by the 5 pulse disciples and force you to belong to which one. If you're an ordinary disciple, you just do NT care about which vein you belong to, but now you are carrying the name of unparalleled qualifications. Disciples of 5 pulses will inevitably rob you no matter which pulse you belong to. It is bound to be suppressed by other disciples. So, this girl advises you to better avoid this trend now and go to the library in a few days," said the seductive woman. "Is the faction strife in Zhongmin?" Yan Jian Wushuang heard the words and shook his head. "A boring battle. Thank you very much. How do you call a girl?" The stunned woman replied with a smile. "Hee, you're welcome. You are later in the mist than me. Just call me Jussi Sure." "Okay, I know." Wu Jianshuang nodded his head after hearing the words, and then asked the specific address of the library to the 9 Musk, stepped on it, and suddenly shot away. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.